Unit 47 to dispatch, conducting routine patrol check on Maple Street, all clear and continuing route.
Welcome to Crime Stories for Sleep. Tonight, before we begin, I want to ask you something simple. Where are you listening from, and what time is it where you are right now? Take a breath, let the world slow down, and as you settle in, allow yourself to drift into the quiet rhythm of tonight's story. The city breathes differently after midnight. Street lamps cast long shadows that stretch across empty sidewalks, their yellow glow creating pools of light in an ocean of darkness. Windows in apartment buildings flicker with the occasional movement of someone unable to sleep, but mostly they remain dark, their glass reflecting nothing but the quiet streets below dot in this hour between night and morning. The urban landscape transforms into something softer, more forgiving. The harsh edges of daytime traffic and bustling crowds dissolve into gentle curves of shadow and light. Parking meters stand like silent sentinels along deserted curbs, their digital displays blinking red numbers into the void. The asphalt still holds the warmth of the day, releasing it slowly into the cool air that carries the faint scent of rain from hours past. Down on 5th Street, where the old police station sits like a fortress of brick and mortar, the building seems to pulse with its own quiet energy. 3 stories of weathered stone and tall windows, some still glowing with the soft fluorescent light of offices where night shift officers move through there. Routines with the measured pace of those who have learned to work within the rhythm of darkness. The station's front entrance faces a small plaza, where a bronze statue of Lady Justice stands surrounded by carefully maintained flower beds. During the day, this space fills with the urgent footsteps of people arriving to file reports, to visit, to seek answers to questions that keep them awake. But now, in these deep hours of night, the plaza lies empty except for the occasional patrol car pulling in or out of the parking area behind the building. Inside the station, fluorescent lights hum with that particular frequency that becomes more noticeable in the quiet hours. The main desk sits bathed in warm light from a banker's lamp, its green glass shade casting everything in an almost nostalgic glow. Behind the desk, rows of filing cabinets line the walls, their metal surfaces reflecting the overhead lights in long, straight lines that seem to stretch into infinity. Officer Martinez walks the corridor with footsteps that echo softly against polished linoleum floors. Her route takes her past dozens of office doors, most closed and dark, but a few still showing light beneath their frames where detectives work through case files or finish reports from the day's events. The building holds the accumulated weight of thousands of stories, each one carefully documented and filed away in systems that have evolved over decades of careful record keeping. Evidence room occupies the entire basement level, accessible only through a secure elevator that requires 2 different keys to operate. Down in that subterranean space, metal shelving extends in neat rows from floor to ceiling, holding boxes and containers marked with numbers and dates that span back 30 years. Each item represents a moment when someone's ordinary life intersected with circumstances that brought them into contact with the law. Back on the main floor, Detective Chen sits at his desk reviewing a stack of photographs from a case that closed 2 weeks ago. The images are black and white, printed on glossy paper that catches the light from his desk lamp. They show various angles of a break-in at a corner grocery store, the kind of small crime that fills most police files. Broken glass scattered across a linoleum floor, an empty cash register drawer pulled open, footprints and spilled flour leading toward the back exit. The photographs will be filed away tomorrow morning, added to the folder that contains witness statements, the store owner's insurance claim, and the report of the arrest made 3 days after the incident. All of it will find its place in the vast filing system that turns every crime, no matter how small, into a carefully organized collection of papers and evidence. Through the tall windows that face the street, the night city spreads out in layers of light and shadow. Traffic signals continue their rhythmic cycle of red, yellow, and green, though few cars pass through the intersections at this hour. Street lights create a constellation of illumination that follows the grid of roads and avenues, marking the boundaries between neighborhoods where people sleep in houses and apartments. Their lives temporarily paused until morning. Dispatch radio crackles occasionally, with brief exchanges between patrol officers and the communications center. Routine checks, location reports, requests for license plate information that get processed and logged with the same methodical attention to detail that characterizes all police work. Every transmission becomes part of the official record, time-stamped and filed in computer systems that never sleep. In the records room on the second floor, rows of bound volumes contain decades of incident reports, each page filled with careful handwriting or neat typescript. The books sit on wooden shelves that extend from floor to ceiling, their leather spines marked with years and case numbers in gold lettering that has faded but remains legible. The room smells of old paper and binding glue, with undertones of the lemon oil used to polish the wooden shelves. Mrs. Patterson, the night records clerk, moves through the room with the quiet efficiency of someone who has spent 23 years learning every filing system the department uses. Her hands know exactly where to find any document from any year, and her footsteps make almost no sound on the carpet that muffles noise in this room where silence is valued above almost everything else. The carpet itself is deep blue, chosen decades ago because it hides stains and shows dust less readily than lighter colors. It has absorbed the sounds of thousands of footsteps, countless hushed conversations, and the soft whisper of papers being sorted and filed. The pattern, barely visible in the artificial light, consists of small geometric shapes that repeat across the entire floor in a design that seems to extend beyond the walls. On the third floor, the chief's office remains dark, but light spills from the conference room where a small team reviews cold case files. They work with magnifying glasses and bright desk lamps, examining evidence photographs and reading through witness statements from crimes that occurred 5, 10, sometimes 20 years ago. Their voices remain low, respectful of the quiet that settles over the building during these late hours. The conference room table, made of oak that has been polished smooth by decades of use, holds neat stacks of manila folders. Each folder contains the complete record of a case that was never solved, crimes that left questions unanswered, and families without closure. The team examines these files with fresh eyes, looking for connections or details that might have been missed when the cases were active. Outside, the city continues its slow rotation through the night hours. Security guards walk through empty office buildings, their flashlights creating moving circles of light in darkened lobbies. Hospital workers tend to patients in wards where the pace of activity never completely stops, even during the deepest hours of night. In apartment buildings, the occasional insomniac moves from room to room, perhaps making tea or reading by a small lamp, while around them the building settles into the quiet rhythms of sleeping occupants. The police station exists as a constant in this landscape of intermittent activity. Its lights stay on, its doors remain unlocked for those who need help or have information to report. Its officers maintain their vigilant watch over streets that most people see only during daylight hours. The building serves as a repository for all the things that happen when darkness transforms the familiar daytime city into something different, something that requires a different kind of attention. Back in the main corridor, Officer Martinez completes another circuit of her patrol route. She checks doors, examines windows, ensures that all the security systems function properly. Her radio remains clipped to her shoulder, ready to receive any call that might require response. But mostly it stays silent except for the periodic check-ins that confirm all patrol units remain operational and alert. The break room on the second floor serves as an informal gathering place for officers between calls. A coffee pot maintains a steady supply of caffeine for those who need to stay alert through the night hours. Comfortable chairs arranged around a low table hold newspapers and magazines from various times of day, creating a small library of current events and feature stories that, Officers read during brief breaks between their duties. The walls of the break room display photographs from department events spanning several decades. Group photos of graduating academy classes, retirement parties, award ceremonies, and community events show the faces of officers who have served the city through different eras. Some of the photographs have faded to sepia tones, while others retain the bright colors of more recent digital printing, creating a visual timeline of the department's history. In the basement, the property room extends far beyond what most people would expect to find beneath a police station. Rows of metal shelving hold evidence from cases both recent and decades old, each item carefully labeled and logged in computer systems that track its location and chain of custody. The room maintains controlled temperature and humidity to preserve items that might be needed for court proceedings or appeals that could occur years after a case closes. Property Officer Williams works the night shift in this subterranean archive, processing items that arrive from various cases throughout the day. Each piece of evidence receives a detailed examination and description before being assigned a storage location and entered into the database systems that track everything the department holds. The work requires meticulous attention to detail and an understanding of legal requirements that govern how evidence must be handled and preserved. The shelving units extend in long rows that seem to stretch into shadowy distances beyond the reach of the fluorescent lighting. Each shelf holds cardboard boxes marked with case numbers, dates, and brief descriptions of contents. The boxes contain the physical remnants of crimes both serious and minor, from traffic accidents to more complex investigations that required months or years to complete. Near the back of the property room, a section dedicated to unsolved cases holds items that await the day when new information might breathe life back into dormant investigations. These shelves maintain their own particular silence, as if the unsolved nature of their contents has settled into the very air around them. The boxes sit undisturbed, except when cold case investigators retrieve them for review, their contents representing questions that remain unanswered. Above ground, the night desk sergeant reviews the log of calls received during the evening hours. Each entry records the time, location, nature of the call, and the officers dispatched to respond. The log creates a detailed record of how the city's needs for police service vary throughout the different hours of night and day, patterns that emerge over weeks and months of careful record keeping. The sergeant's desk sits positioned to provide a clear view of both the front entrance and the corridor leading to the offices beyond. From this vantage point, the sergeant can observe everyone who enters the building and direct them to the appropriate office or officer. The desk itself, made of heavy wood that has been refinished multiple times over its decades of service, holds neat stacks of forms, several telephones, and a computer terminal that provides access to various law enforcement databases. Through the front windows of the station, the view encompasses several blocks of the downtown area where most businesses close by evening, leaving only restaurants and bars to provide signs of activity during the late hours. Street lights illuminate empty sidewalks where during business hours pedestrians move between offices, shops, and parking areas. The contrast between day and night activity in this part of the city becomes most apparent during these quiet hours, when the absence of people makes the urban infrastructure seem like a stage set waiting for morning to bring its performers back to life. In the communications center, dispatchers monitor radio channels and computer systems that connect them to patrol units throughout the city. The room operates with subdued lighting to reduce eye strain during long shifts spent watching multiple screens and listening to radio traffic. Each dispatcher works at a console equipped with several monitors displaying maps, database search results, and status updates from officers in the field. The communications center serves as the nerve center for coordinating police response to calls for service. Every request for police assistance, whether phoned in by citizens or observed by patrol officers, gets processed through this room where dispatchers evaluate the nature of each situation and assign appropriate resources. The work requires the ability to remain calm while handling potentially stressful situations and the skill to gather accurate information quickly from people who may be upset or confused. Radio communications follow protocols developed over years of experience with different types of emergency situations. Dispatchers and officers use specific codes and procedures that ensure clear communication while maintaining appropriate confidentiality about ongoing cases. The radio traffic creates a constant background soundtrack to police work, a series of brief exchanges that coordinate the movement and activities of officers throughout their shifts. Back in the records room, Mrs. Patterson files the last reports from the day shift, adding them to folders that will eventually find permanent homes in the larger filing systems. Each report receives careful review to ensure it contains all required information before being assigned a permanent location in the files. The process reflects decades of refinement in how police departments organize and preserve the documentation that forms the official record of their activities. The filing systems themselves represent an evolution of approaches to record keeping that spans from handwritten ledgers to modern computer databases. Physical files remain important for cases that may require court proceedings, while electronic records provide rapid access to information needed by officers and investigators. The combination of old and new systems creates redundancy that helps ensure no information is lost over time. As the night progresses toward the early morning hours, the station maintains its steady rhythm of activity. Officers complete their patrol routes, dispatchers handle calls for service, and various support staff members continue the administrative tasks that keep the department functioning smoothly. The building itself seems to breathe with this rhythm, its lights casting consistent pools of illumination into the darkness. Beyond its windows, the parking area behind the station sees the periodic arrival and departure of patrol cars as officers begin and end their shifts or return to file reports. The vehicles, marked with the city's official colors and emblems, represent the visible presence of law enforcement that most citizens encounter during their interactions with police. Each car carries equipment and supplies needed to handle the various situations officers might encounter during their patrols. Inside the vehicles, mobile data terminals provide officers with access to the same databases and communication systems available at the station. Radio equipment maintains constant contact with dispatchers and other officers, creating a network that allows coordinated response to incidents that require multiple units. The cars serve as mobile offices equipped with everything officers need to document incidents, write reports, and communicate with various agencies. The night air carries sounds that become more noticeable in the absence of daytime traffic and activity. The distant hum of air conditioning units on building rooftops, the occasional sound of a truck passing on the interstate several miles away, the soft rustling of trees in the small park across from the station. These background sounds create a subtle symphony that underscores the quiet hours. When the city rests, window glass in the station reflects both interior lights and occasional exterior illumination from passing vehicles or aircraft overhead. The reflections create layers of light that sometimes make it difficult to distinguish between inside and outside, as if the building exists in a space that bridges the internal world of police work and the external community it serves. The effect becomes most pronounced during these deep night hours, when the contrast between artificial light and natural darkness is most stark. In offices throughout the building, desk lamps create pools of warm light around work areas where officers complete reports, review case files, or handle administrative tasks that require concentration and attention to detail. The light from these individual lamps combines with overhead fluorescent fixtures to create an environment that feels both professional and comfortable, suited to work that often requires long periods of careful concentration. Each desk holds the tools of modern police work: computers, telephones, reference materials, forms and documents specific to various types of cases. The organization of these work areas reflects individual preferences and the specific requirements of different types of police work, from patrol officers who need mobile flexibility to detectives who work with complex case files over extended periods. The city beyond the station windows continues its gradual progression through the night hours. In residential neighborhoods, porch lights remain on to welcome late arriving family members or to provide security lighting for empty driveways and front yards. Traffic lights continue their rhythmic cycles, maintaining order for the occasional vehicle that passes through intersections where during daylight hours they manage steady streams of traffic. Night shift workers in various industries move through the city along routes that become familiar through repetition. Hospital staff, security guards, delivery drivers, and others who work while most people sleep create their own patterns of movement through streets that look different in artificial light than they do under the sun. These workers, like police officers, understand the city as a place that never completely stops, even during the hours when it appears most quiet. The police station stands as one anchor point in this network of night activity, a place where the city's need for safety and order receives constant attention regardless of the hour. The building's lights remain steady beacons in a landscape where most windows stay dark, marking it as a place where help is always available for those who need it. As the night deepens, the temperature gradually drops and the air becomes cleaner, washed by the absence of vehicle exhaust and other pollutants that accumulate during busy daytime hours. This cleaner air carries scents more clearly: the faint aroma of food from late-night restaurants, the smell of dew beginning to form on grass and pavement, the subtle odors of various industrial processes that continue regardless of the hour. Inside the station, these external scents mix with the institutional smells that characterize government buildings: floor wax, cleaning chemicals, coffee, and paper. The combination creates an atmosphere that feels simultaneously official and welcoming, a place where serious work gets done but where people in need can find help and assistance. The night shift officers understand their role in maintaining the continuity of police service during hours when fewer supervisors are present and when situations might require quick decisions based on training and experience rather than consultation with higher authorities. This responsibility shapes the culture of night shift work, creating teams of officers who develop strong working relationships and mutual trust. Equipment rooms throughout the building hold supplies and tools needed for various types of police work. Protective gear, communications equipment, specialized investigation tools, and emergency supplies remain organized and ready for use at any time. The maintenance of this equipment requires ongoing attention to ensure everything remains functional when needed. Radio equipment receives particular attention during night shifts when clear communication becomes especially important for officer safety. Regular testing of radio systems, backup equipment checks, and coordination with communication centers in other jurisdictions help ensure that officers remain connected to the support they need while working alone or in small teams during overnight hours. The quiet that settles over the city during these deep night hours provides a different working environment than the busy activity of day shifts. Officers have more time to complete paperwork, conduct thorough investigations of non-emergency situations, and perform community policing activities that benefit from unhurried attention to detail. This slower pace allows for different types of police work: checking on elderly residents who live alone, conducting security checks of businesses and schools, investigating minor crimes that don't require immediate response. The night shift creates opportunities for officers to develop relationships with community members who work during overnight hours or who have concerns that don't require urgent attention. Street lights throughout the city create patterns of illumination that help officers navigate familiar patrol routes while remaining alert to anything unusual. The consistent lighting reveals details that might be missed during daylight hours, when shadows and bright sunlight create different visibility conditions. Officers learn to read these nighttime landscapes with experienced eyes that notice when something appears out of place. The station's position in the downtown area provides easy access to various neighborhoods and business districts throughout the city. Patrol routes radiate outward from the station, covering residential areas, commercial zones, industrial districts, and recreational facilities. Each type of area presents different challenges and opportunities for police work during overnight hours. Parks and recreational areas receive special attention during night shifts when they should be empty, but sometimes attract activities that require police intervention. Officers patrol these areas with particular awareness of signs that indicate inappropriate or illegal activity while remaining sensitive to the rights of people who might be in parks for legitimate reasons. Business districts require different types of attention during overnight hours, with emphasis on security checks of buildings and parking areas where break-ins or vandalism might occur. Officers develop relationships with security guards and business owners who work during night hours, creating networks of people who can provide information about unusual activity. Industrial areas present their own unique characteristics during night shifts, with some facilities operating around the clock while others remain secured and empty. Officers learn the normal patterns of activity in these areas, so they can quickly identify when something appears unusual or potentially problematic. The gradual progression of night toward morning brings subtle changes that experienced officers learn to recognize. The angle of streetlights creates different shadow patterns as the earth rotates. Air temperature begins its slow climb toward the warmth of day. Traffic patterns show the earliest signs of people beginning their morning routines. These changes signal the approaching end of the night shift and the beginning of another cycle in the continuous operation of police services. Day shift officers begin arriving at the station for briefings about overnight activity, while night shift personnel prepare reports and evidence that will need attention during business hours. The transition between shifts requires careful communication about ongoing situations, investigations that will continue into the day shift, and any equipment or facility issues that need attention. This passing of responsibility ensures that police services continue without interruption despite the change in personnel. Case files that receive attention during night shifts often benefit from the quieter environment and reduced interruptions that characterize overnight work. Officers can focus on detailed report writing, evidence analysis, and follow-up investigation activities that require sustained concentration. The night hours provide ideal conditions for this type of careful, methodical police work. The filing systems that preserve all this documentation operate according to standards developed over decades of experience with legal requirements and practical needs for information retrieval. Every report, photograph, piece of evidence, and investigative note must be filed in ways that make it accessible to future users while ensuring the security and integrity of the information. As dawn approaches, the night shift continues its steady work of protecting and serving the community during the hours when most people sleep. The station remains a constant presence, its lights a steady beacon in the gradually lightening darkness, its officers maintaining their vigilant watch over the quiet streets of the sleeping city. Asterisk. The morning light filters through tall windows of the records room, casting rectangular patterns across rows of filing cabinets that stretch from floor to ceiling. Mrs. Patterson arrives early, her soft-soled shoes making whispered sounds against the polished linoleum as she moves through the familiar landscape of organized memory. The air holds the scent of aged paper and manila folders, a perfume of time that has settled into every corner of this quiet sanctuary. She begins her day, as she has for 23 years, by checking the overnight requests that wait in neat stacks on her desk. Each request represents someone's need to revisit the past, to find answers in documents that have been carefully preserved and cataloged according to systems that evolved over decades of patient refinement. The requests arrive on standard forms, filled out in various handwritings that range from careful print to hurried script. Each one a doorway into stories that wait in the files. First request seeks information about a case from 1987, a simple burglary that was solved within a week, but left questions that someone now needs answered. Mrs. Patterson moves to the appropriate cabinet, her fingers finding the correct drawer with the unconscious precision of long experience. The drawer slides open with a soft metallic whisper, revealing rows of folders arranged in numerical order, their tabs marked with dates and case numbers written in fading ink. Each folder represents hours of work by officers who documented their investigations with careful attention to detail that would satisfy court requirements and departmental standards. The folders vary in thickness depending on the complexity of their cases, some containing only a few pages while others bulge with photographs, witness statements, evidence logs, and supplementary reports that accumulated over months or years of investigation. 1987 burglary file contains 12 pages of documentation, each sheet a different texture of paper that reflects the various sources from which the information was gathered. The initial report, typed on official department letterhead, describes the crime scene in precise language that transforms the chaos of a break-in into ordered observations that can be reviewed and understood by anyone who reads the file. Photographs attached to the report with small metal clips show various angles of the damaged storefront, the scattered merchandise, and the improvised entry point where the perpetrator gained access. The black and white images, printed on glossy paper that has maintained its contrast over the decades, capture details that witness statements might miss or forget. Each photograph bears a small white label with handwritten numbers that correspond to a log sheet detailing the time and circumstances of each image. The witness statements, taken on pre-printed forms with spaces for names, addresses, and detailed accounts of observed events, show the careful handwriting of officers who transcribed the words of people who saw or heard something relevant to the case. The forms use carbon paper that created duplicate copies, one for the case file and another for the central filing system, ensuring that information would not be lost if individual files were misplaced. Mrs. Patterson handles each document with practiced care, her fingers recognizing the different textures and weights of paper used over the years. Official report forms have a crisp feel and clean edges, while carbon copies retain the slight indentations left by typewriter keys and the faint blue tint of carbon transfer. Handwritten notes on various types of paper, from lined notebook sheets to small memo pads, add their own textures and characteristics to each file. The filing cabinet itself, constructed of heavy-gauge steel and finished in government standard beige paint, has served the department for over 30 years. Its drawers slide on ball-bearing tracks that have been lubricated and maintained to ensure smooth, quiet operation. The cabinet's interior uses hanging folders with metal tabs that support manila folders within them, creating a system that maximizes storage space while maintaining easy access to individual files. Each drawer holds approximately 200 case files arranged in strict numerical order that corresponds to the department's case numbering system. The system assigns numbers based on the year and sequence of reported crimes, creating a chronological record that makes it possible to locate any case if its approximate date and type are known. The numbering system has remained consistent for over 40 years, providing continuity that allows files from different decades to coexist in the same organizational structure. The next request on Mrs. Patterson's list asks for information about a series of vandalism incidents from 1993. The case required 6 months to solve and generated a file that occupies nearly an entire folder. She locates the appropriate cabinet and drawer, her movements creating a soft rhythm of footsteps, sliding drawers, and rustling papers that forms the soundtrack of archive work. The 1993 vandalism file contains a progression of reports that document how a minor problem gradually grew into a pattern that required systematic investigation. The first report, dated in early spring, describes damage to a single building that seemed like isolated mischief. Subsequent reports, filed at weekly intervals, show how similar incidents began occurring throughout a specific neighborhood, each one documented with the same careful attention to detail as the first dot maps inserted into the file show the locations of each incident, marked with small colored pins that create a visual pattern of criminal activity. The maps, printed on sturdy paper and folded to fit within the file folder, bear the marks of frequent handling by investigators who used them to identify connections between seemingly random events. Pencil marks and annotations in various handwritings show how different officers contributed observations and theories to the developing investigation. Evidence photographs from the vandalism case show the evolution of the perpetrator's methods and targets. Early images capture simple graffiti and minor property damage, while later photographs document increasingly sophisticated vandalism that suggested the involvement of multiple individuals with access to specialized tools and materials. Each photograph includes detailed captions that describe lighting conditions, camera settings, and the specific aspects of damage being documented. The final reports in the file describe the investigation's conclusion and the arrest of 3 juvenile suspects who were referred to family court rather than prosecuted as adults. The resolution reports include detailed accounts of interviews with suspects, their parents, and school officials who provided background information that helped explain the motivation and circumstances behind the vandalism spree. Mrs. Patterson returns the 1993 file to its proper location and moves to fulfill the next request, which seeks information about a traffic accident from 2001. The accident file resides in a newer section of the archive where file folders made of different materials reflect changes in office supply, standards, and environmental considerations that influence departmental purchasing decisions in later years. The traffic accident file demonstrates how documentation methods evolved to include computer-generated reports, alongside traditional handwritten forms. The investigating officer used a laptop computer to complete the initial report, printing it on paper that shows the clean, uniform appearance of laser printing, rather than the slightly uneven impression of typewriter text that characterizes earlier files. Diagrams in the accident file show the positions of vehicles, skid marks, and traffic control devices with precision that reflects the use of measuring tools and techniques not commonly available to officers in earlier decades. The diagrams, created using computer software and printed on graph paper, provide scaled representations of the accident scene that could be used to recreate the incident for court proceedings or insurance investigations. Witness statements in the accident file include contact information that reflects changes in communication technology over the years. Phone numbers include area codes that became mandatory as the telephone system expanded, and some statements include email addresses that began appearing on official forms during the late 1990s. These details provide subtle indicators of how society changed during the years represented in the archive. The filing system accommodates these changes through flexible organizational methods that can incorporate new types of documentation without disrupting the overall structure. New forms and technologies get integrated into existing files, while the basic organizational principles remain consistent across decades of changing procedures and equipment. Mrs. Patterson moves to another section of the archive to fulfill a request for information about a domestic disturbance case from 1989. The file contains multiple reports spanning several months, documenting a pattern of incidents that required repeated police response to the same address. Each report follows the same format, but shows subtle differences in handwriting, observations, and recommendations that reflect the perspectives of different responding officers. The domestic disturbance file illustrates how certain types of cases generate ongoing documentation rather than single incident reports. Follow-up reports, filed at regular intervals, track the effectiveness of various interventions and court orders designed to address the underlying problems that generated repeated calls for police service. The file shows how individual cases can span months or years, while officers work with other agencies to address complex social situations. Court documents within the domestic disturbance file show how police reports interface with the judicial system to create comprehensive records of legal proceedings. Copies of protective orders, hearing schedules, and judicial decisions provide context for understanding how individual incidents fit into larger patterns of legal intervention and community protection efforts. The file also contains correspondence with social service agencies, victim advocacy organizations, and other community resources that became involved in addressing the situation. These letters and reports, written on various organizational letterheads and filed chronologically within the case folder, show how police work often requires coordination with multiple agencies to achieve effective solutions to complex problems. Each document in the domestic disturbance file has been handled by numerous people over the years: the original officers who wrote reports, supervisors who reviewed them, court clerks who copied relevant portions for legal proceedings and archive, staff who organized and maintained the file for future reference. The accumulated handling has left subtle traces on the paper, small signs of wear that tell their own story about the document's journey through various administrative processes. Mrs. Patterson carefully examines each document as she prepares, if for copying, noting any signs of damage or deterioration that might require special preservation measures. Some older documents show yellowing around the edges where exposure to light has gradually changed the chemical composition of the paper. Others display small tears or stains that occurred during years of handling and storage in less than ideal conditions. The preservation of archival documents requires ongoing attention to environmental factors that can accelerate deterioration. The records room maintains controlled temperature and humidity levels to slow the aging process of paper and ink. Circulation systems filter dust and pollutants that could accumulate on stored documents, while lighting systems use bulbs that minimize ultraviolet radiation, known to cause fading and brittleness in archival materials. Filing cabinets receive regular maintenance to ensure their seals remain tight and their mechanical components function smoothly. The cabinets' interiors are cleaned periodically to remove dust and debris that could contaminate stored documents, and their locks and latches are serviced to maintain security while preserving easy access for authorized users. The next request seeks information about a series of break-ins that occurred in 2003 during a 2-month period when the same commercial area was targeted repeatedly. The case file occupies 2 complete folders and includes supplementary materials that required separate storage in oversized filing systems designed to accommodate maps, photographs, and technical documents that exceed standard folder dimensions. The 2003 break-in investigation generated extensive documentation because it involved coordination between multiple law enforcement agencies and required analysis of evidence using forensic techniques that were becoming more sophisticated during that period. The file includes laboratory reports with detailed analyses of fingerprints, tool marks, and other physical evidence that helped link the various incidents and identify suspects. Photographs from the break-in investigation show the evolution of forensic photography techniques over the years. Earlier images in the archive were taken with film cameras and processed in traditional darkrooms, resulting in black and white prints with characteristic grain and contrast. The 2003 photographs, taken with early digital cameras, show the improved color accuracy and detail resolution that new technology made possible. Evidence logs in the 2003 file demonstrate the increasing sophistication of chain of custody procedures that ensure the integrity of physical evidence throughout the investigation and prosecution process. Each item collected from crime scenes receives detailed documentation that tracks its location and handling, from initial collection through final disposition, creating an unbroken record that satisfies legal requirements for evidence admissibility. The break-in file also contains computer-generated reports that show how database systems began supplementing traditional paper-based record-keeping during the early 2000s. These reports, printed on continuous form paper and separated into individual pages, provide statistical analyses and cross-references that would have been impossible to create using manual filing systems. Mrs. Patterson moves through the archive with practiced efficiency, locating files and preparing documents according to the specific requirements of each request. Some requests require complete file copies, while others need only specific documents or pages. Each copying task requires careful handling to avoid damage to original documents, while ensuring that copies maintain sufficient quality for their intended use. The copying equipment used in the records room employs technologies designed specifically for archival work. The machines operate at slower speeds than standard office copiers to reduce stress on delicate documents, and they use paper and toner formulations that resist fading and chemical deterioration over time. Special lighting systems minimize heat and ultraviolet exposure during the copying process. Between copying tasks, Mrs. Patterson returns files to their proper locations using procedures that ensure accuracy and prevent misfiling. Each file receives a visual inspection before being returned to verify that all contents remain properly arranged and that no documents have been damaged during handling. The filing process follows specific sequences that reduce the risk of placing files in incorrect locations. The physical arrangement of the records room reflects decades of experience with efficient archive management. Filing cabinets are positioned to allow easy access while maximizing storage capacity within the available space. Work tables provide adequate surface area for examining large files and preparing copying requests, while storage shelves hold supplies and equipment needed for ongoing archive operations. Lighting throughout the records room uses fixtures that provide even illumination without creating glare on document surfaces or eye strain for people working extended periods. The lighting system includes both general overhead illumination and focused task lighting at workstations where detailed examination of documents requires additional visibility. Air circulation in the records room operates continuously to maintain proper temperature and humidity, while filtering airborne contaminants that could damage stored documents. The system uses filters specifically designed for archival environments to remove particles and chemical pollutants that might accelerate paper deterioration or cause discoloration of documents and photographs. Security systems protect the archive through multiple layers of access control and monitoring. Electronic locks on filing cabinets and storage rooms ensure that only authorized personnel can access sensitive documents, while surveillance systems record all activity in areas where valuable records are stored and handled. These security measures protect both the documents themselves and the information they contain. The afternoon brings a request for files from a complex fraud investigation that occurred in 1998 and required collaboration between local police, federal agencies, and financial institutions. The case generated documentation that fills 6 complete file folders and required the creation of a detailed index system to help users locate specific information within the extensive collection of reports, statements, and evidence. The fraud investigation file demonstrates how certain types of cases require documentation methods that exceed standard police report formats. Financial records, computer printouts, correspondence, and technical analyses from various sources created a collection of materials that required careful organization to remain useful for future reference. The file includes a master index that lists all documents by type, date, and location within the folder system. Each folder in the fraud investigation file contains different categories of information, organized according to subjects rather than chronological order. One folder holds all witness statements and interviews. Another contains financial records and analyses, while additional folders organize correspondence, search warrants, and evidence documentation according to their specific functions within the overall investigation. The complexity of the fraud case required investigators to create visual aids that helped explain relationships between various individuals, businesses, and financial transactions. Charts and diagrams, drawn on large sheets of paper and folded to fit within the file folders, show how money moved between accounts and how different suspects played specific roles in the overall criminal scheme. Mrs. Patterson takes special care with the fraud investigation file because its size and complexity make it particularly vulnerable to damage from frequent handling. She uses document stands and protective covers while working with large charts and diagrams, ensuring that folded materials are supported properly to prevent tears along crease lines that have become weakened over years of storage. The copying requirements for the fraud investigation file exceed the capabilities of standard office equipment, requiring the use of specialized machines that can accommodate oversized documents and produce copies on various paper types. Some documents must be copied at reduced sizes to fit standard paper formats, while others require enlargement to maintain readability of small text and fine details. Technical reports within the fraud file contain analyses prepared by forensic accountants and computer specialists who examine financial records and electronic evidence using specialized techniques not commonly available to local police departments. These reports, written in technical language and supported by complex statistical analyses, provide expert interpretations of evidence that helped prosecutors build their case against the suspects. The fraud investigation ultimately resulted in convictions for multiple defendants and the recovery of significant financial assets that were returned to victims of the crime. Documentation of the recovery process, including court orders and asset transfer records, completes the file and provides closure to a case that required 3 years from initial report to final resolution. As evening approaches, Mrs. Patterson begins the process of securing the archive for the night shift. Files that have been requested during the day receive final inspection before being returned to their proper locations, while copying equipment is shut down and covered to protect it from dust accumulation during overnight hours. The daily work of the archive creates its own rhythm that varies with the demands of ongoing investigations, court proceedings, and administrative requirements. Some days bring numerous requests for recent files that are still being actively used by investigators and prosecutors, while other days focus on older cases that surface in appeals, civil litigation, or new investigations that require historical context. Each file that passes through the archive tells part of the larger story of police work in the community, showing how individual incidents fit into patterns of criminal activity, social problems, and community responses that evolve over time. The archive preserves not only the details of specific cases, but also the methods and procedures used by police officers during different periods of departmental history. Changes in technology, legal requirements, and investigative techniques become visible through examination of files from different time periods. Early files show the limitations and advantages of manual systems that relied on careful handwriting and typing, while later files demonstrate how computer technology expanded the possibilities for analysis and cross-reference of criminal activity patterns. The archive serves multiple functions beyond simple storage of completed cases. Researchers studying crime patterns, policymakers evaluating the effectiveness of various law enforcement strategies, and training personnel seeking examples of investigative techniques all rely on archived files for information that would otherwise be lost when individual officers retire or transfer to other positions. Legal proceedings often require access to archived files years or decades after cases were closed, particularly in appeals processes or civil litigation where police actions and procedures come under scrutiny. The archive maintains files according to standards, that ensure their admissibility as evidence and their usefulness for reconstructing events that occurred many years in the past. The quiet of evening settles over the records room as Mrs. Patterson completes her final tasks of the day. Filing cabinets stand in neat rows, their contents organized according to systems that have evolved over decades of experience with the practical requirements of law enforcement documentation. Each cabinet holds hundreds of stories, thousands of individual incidents that collectively form the history of crime and police response in the community. Tomorrow will bring new requests for archived information, new files to be created and organized, and ongoing maintenance of systems that preserve the documentary heritage of police work. The archive continues its function as a repository of memory, ensuring that the experiences and knowledge of past investigations remain available to inform future decisions and actions. The night shift begins its work in other parts of the police station while the records room rests in darkness, its contents waiting silently for the next day's requests for information. In the quiet hours between shifts, the archive maintains its vigil over decades of carefully preserved documentation, holding the stories of a community's encounter with crime and its ongoing efforts to maintain safety and justice for all its citizens. Asterisk. The thick manila folders rest in perfect rows, their weight creating gentle depressions in the metal shelving that has supported them through countless seasons of memory. Each folder carries the accumulated mass of paper, photographs, and evidence documentation that transforms individual moments of human crisis into organized collections of facts and observations. The folders themselves have aged from bright manila to deeper amber tones, their surfaces bearing the subtle marks of handling by dozens of different hands over the years. Detective Rodriguez enters the cold case room on the third floor, where fluorescent lights cast even illumination across rows of storage units that extend from floor to ceiling. The room operates in perpetual quiet, disturbed only by the soft whisper of air circulation and the occasional creak of buildings settling. Here, time moves differently than in the active investigation areas below, measured not in hours or days, but in the slow accumulation of dust on folder edges and the gradual fading of ink on document labels. The first folder he selects contains a case from 1981, its contents preserved in the careful arrangement that investigators left when the active investigation concluded. The folder opens with a soft rustling sound, revealing layers of documentation that chronicle a missing person case that was never resolved. Each document within the folder represents hours of work by officers who followed leads, interviewed witnesses, and searched areas where the missing person might have been found. Photographs in the folder show a young woman's face from various angles, images taken for identification purposes that have acquired an haunting quality through decades of storage in the silent archive. The photographs, printed on glossy paper that has maintained its contrast despite the passage of years, capture details that investigators hoped would help locate someone who simply vanished from her normal routine without explanation or apparent cause. The missing person file contains maps marked with search areas, each section colored according to the thoroughness of coverage and the probability of finding evidence. Red areas indicate zones that received intensive ground searches, while yellow sections show areas that were examined from vehicles or aircraft. Blue markings denote water features that were searched by divers and sonar equipment, creating a comprehensive record of the extensive effort invested in the case. Witness statements in the folder describe the last known sightings of the missing person, each account carefully recorded in the formal language that transforms personal observations into official testimony. The statements reveal the ordinary details of everyday life that acquired significance only after someone failed to return home. A brief conversation at a coffee shop, a wave goodbye from a departing car, a phone call that mentioned plans for the evening that were never fulfilled. Detective Rodriguez handles each document with practiced care, aware that these papers represent someone's life and the grief of family members who never received answers to their questions. The case file contains letters from relatives asking for updates, their handwriting showing the strain of uncertainty that continued for months and years after the initial disappearance. Each letter receives a formal response from the department, maintaining hope while acknowledging the reality that Leeds had been exhausted. The missing person investigation generated supplementary files that contain background information about the subject's life, relationships, and circumstances that might have contributed to the disappearance. Employment records, school transcripts, medical information, and financial statements create a detailed portrait of someone whose ordinary life became the subject of extraordinary scrutiny when normal patterns were broken. Evidence: logs in the missing person file catalog items collected from various locations during the search effort. Personal belongings found in the subject's apartment, fiber samples from clothing, soil samples from search areas, and numerous other items were collected and analyzed according to the forensic CAPABILITIES available during the early 1980s. Each item receives detailed documentation that preserves its potential value for future analysis using techniques that might become available. Next folder contains documentation from a burglary investigation that concluded in 1976. Its pages yellowed with age but still clearly legible. The case involved a series of residential break-ins that occurred during a 6-month period in a specific neighborhood. Each incident carefully documented and cross-referenced to identify patterns that might lead to the perpetrators. Identification: crime scene photographs from the 1976 burglary case show the interior spaces of homes that have probably been remodeled, sold, or demolished in the decades since the investigation. The black and white images capture details of 1970s home furnishings and decorations that place the crimes in their historical context while documenting the specific evidence that investigators hoped would solve the case. Each burglary scene was photographed from multiple angles to capture the methods used by the perpetrator to gain entry, the areas of homes that were searched, and the types of items that were taken. The photographs show overturned furniture, open drawers, and scattered belongings that represent the violation of private spaces and the disruption of families' sense of security in their own homes. Evidence collected from the burglary scenes includes fingerprints lifted from various surfaces, tool marks from forced entry points, and fabric samples that might have been left by the perpetrator's clothing. The evidence documentation shows the meticulous care with which each item was collected, labeled, and preserved according to the forensic standards of the 1970s. Burglary investigation file contains detailed neighborhood maps that show the locations of each incident and their relationship to streets, alleys, and other features that might have influenced the perpetrator's choice of targets. The maps include timing information that reveals patterns in when the burglaries occurred, suggesting that the perpetrator had regular access to the neighborhood during specific hours when residents were likely to be absent. Detective Rodriguez moves to another section of the cold case storage area where folders from the 1990s occupy several rows of shelving. The folders from this period show the influence of computer technology on police record-keeping, with many documents printed rather than typed, and database reports supplementing traditional handwritten forms. A folder from 1994 contains the investigation of a suspicious death that was never conclusively determined to be murder, suicide, or accident. The case file runs to over 200 pages of documentation as investigators pursued multiple theories and examined extensive evidence in their attempt to determine exactly what occurred. Suspicious death investigation includes autopsy reports with detailed medical findings that describe injuries and circumstances surrounding the death. The medical examiner's analysis, written in technical language and supported by photographs and diagrams, provides the scientific foundation for understanding the physical evidence while acknowledging the limitations of forensic medicine in determining intent or exact sequence of events. Police reports in the suspicious death file describe the scene where the body was discovered, including detailed measurements and observations about the position of the deceased, the condition of surrounding areas, and the presence or absence of evidence that might indicate whether another person was involved. The scene documentation follows protocols designed to preserve every detail that might become significant during the investigation. Witness interviews in the suspicious death case reveal the complex personal relationships and circumstances that surrounded the deceased's final weeks. Family members, friends, co-workers, and neighbors all provided information about the deceased's state of mind, recent activities, and any concerns or problems that might have contributed to the circumstances of death. The investigation included financial records that show the deceased's economic situation, correspondence that reveals personal relationships and concerns, and other documentation that builds a comprehensive picture of someone's life in the period leading up to their death. The thoroughness of the investigation reflects the importance of understanding all possible factors that might explain the circumstances investigators were trying to interpret. Laboratory analyses in the suspicious death file show the results of various forensic tests performed on evidence collected from the scene and the deceased's possessions. Toxicology reports indicate the presence or absence of drugs or poisons, while other tests examine fibers, fingerprints, and other trace evidence that might indicate contact with another person or unusual circumstances. The case remained officially open but inactive, classified as a suspicious death with insufficient evidence to determine the exact manner or cause. The file contains periodic review reports where supervisors examined the case to determine whether new investigative techniques or additional information might justify renewed active investigation. Detective Rodriguez selects another folder, this one containing a robbery investigation from 1988 that was solved but generated extensive documentation due to the complexity of the case and the number of people involved. The robbery occurred at a small business during evening hours and involved multiple perpetrators, who were eventually identified and prosecuted. The robbery investigation file contains detailed statements from the business owner and employees who were present during the crime. Their accounts describe the sequence of events, the appearance and behavior of the perpetrators, and the specific items that were taken. The statements show how traumatic events can be remembered with both vivid clarity and confusing uncertainty, as witnesses recall some details perfectly while remaining unclear about others. Security camera footage from the robbery was preserved on videotape that required special equipment to view, representing the state of surveillance technology during the late 1980s. The investigation file contains still photographs printed from the videotape, showing various moments during the crime that helped investigators identify the perpetrators and understand their methods. Evidence from the robbery included fingerprints found at the scene, items dropped by the perpetrators during their escape, and personal belongings recovered when the suspects were arrested. Each piece of evidence receives detailed documentation that tracks its collection, analysis, and use during prosecution of the case. The robbery investigation led to the arrest of 4 individuals whose backgrounds and relationships are documented in supplementary files that show how the crime was planned and executed. The files reveal that the robbery was not a spontaneous act, but resulted from financial pressures and criminal associations that brought the perpetrators together for this specific purpose. Court documents in the robbery file show how the police investigation supported successful prosecution of all 4 defendants, with detailed testimony and evidence presentation that resulted in convictions and prison sentences. The legal proceedings demonstrate how thorough police work creates the foundation for effective prosecution and appropriate punishment for criminal activity. In another section of the cold case storage area, Detective Rodriguez examines folders from the 1960s and early 1970s, when police documentation relied entirely on manual methods and carbon paper copies. These older files have a distinctive appearance and feel, with typed reports on letterhead that reflects the design standards of earlier decades. A folder from 1969 contains the investigation of a series of vandalism incidents that targeted religious buildings throughout the city during a period of social unrest. The case file shows how police work often reflects broader social and political tensions that influence both criminal activity and law enforcement responses. The vandalism investigation includes photographs of damaged property that show the specific nature of the crimes and their symbolic significance during a period when religious and political conflicts influenced community relationships. The images, printed in black and white with the characteristic grain of film photography, document both the physical damage and the social context that made these crimes particularly concerning to community leaders. Police reports from the vandalism investigation describe interviews with religious leaders, community activists, and individuals who were suspected of involvement in the crimes. The reports show how police officers navigated sensitive social and political issues while maintaining their focus on factual investigation and evidence collection. The vandalism case was never solved, despite extensive investigation that included surveillance operations, community meetings, and coordination with federal agencies that were monitoring various activist groups during the period. The file contains correspondence with FBI agents and other federal investigators who shared information about individuals and organizations that might have been involved in the crimes. Evidence collected during the vandalism investigation includes paint samples, handwriting analyses of graffiti, and witness descriptions of vehicles and individuals seen near the targeted buildings. The evidence documentation shows the careful attention to detail that characterized police work even when investigative resources and forensic capabilities were more limited than they would become in later decades. Detective Rodriguez continues through the cold case files, each folder opening to reveal different aspects of human behavior and police response during various periods of the city's history. The files collectively form a documentary record of how crime and law enforcement have evolved over the decades, showing changes in both criminal methods and investigative techniques. A folder from 1983 contains documentation of a fraud investigation that involved forged checks and false identification documents. The case required cooperation between local police and banking institutions to track the movement of fraudulent transactions across multiple accounts and locations. The investigation demonstrates the increasing complexity of financial crimes during the 1980s, as electronic banking systems created new opportunities for criminal activity. The fraud investigation file contains examples of forged documents that show the sophisticated techniques used by the perpetrators to create convincing false identification and financial instruments. The forgeries required specialized knowledge and equipment that indicated the involvement of individuals with access to professional printing and document production capabilities. Bank records in the fraud file show the pattern of transactions that allowed investigators to trace the movement of stolen funds and identify the accounts used by the perpetrators. The financial documentation reveals how the criminals attempted to disguise their activities by spreading transactions across multiple institutions and using false names and addresses. The fraud case resulted in arrests and convictions for several individuals who operated as part of an organized group that specialized in financial crimes. The investigation revealed connections to similar crimes in other jurisdictions, leading to cooperation with police departments in neighboring cities and states to address what appeared to be a regional criminal enterprise. Evidence from the fraud investigation includes original documents, fingerprint analyses, handwriting comparisons, and testimony from banking officials who helped investigators understand the technical aspects of the crimes. The case demonstrates how certain types of crimes require specialized knowledge and investigative techniques that go beyond traditional police work. The afternoon light filtering through high windows creates patterns of shadow and illumination that move slowly across the storage area as Detective Rodriguez continues his review of cold case files. Each folder represents hours of work by investigators who pursued leads with the same dedication, whether their cases were solved quickly or remained open for years without resolution. A folder from 1979 contains the investigation of a hit-and-run accident that killed a pedestrian, but never resulted in identification of the responsible driver. The case file includes extensive documentation of the accident scene, mechanical analyses of vehicle parts found at the location, and interviews with witnesses who provided varying accounts of what they observed. The hit-and-run investigation generated detailed diagrams of the accident scene that show the positions of vehicles, the path of the pedestrian, and physical evidence that helped investigators understand the sequence of events. The diagrams, drawn by hand on graph paper, provide scaled representations of distances and angles that were used to determine the speed and direction of the vehicle that caused the fatality. Evidence from the hit-and-run included paint chips, glass fragments, and mechanical parts that were analyzed to determine the make, model, and year of the vehicle involved in the accident. The forensic analysis, conducted using the techniques available during the late 1970s, provided investigators with a detailed description of the vehicle they were seeking. The investigation included canvassing of auto repair shops, salvage yards, and used car dealers to locate vehicles that might have been involved in the accident. Police officers visited hundreds of businesses and interviewed mechanics and salespeople who might have encountered vehicles with damage consistent with the hit-and-run incident. Despite extensive investigation, the hit-and-run case was never solved, leaving family members without closure and investigators without answers to questions that seemed solvable given the amount of physical evidence available. The file contains periodic review reports where supervisors reconsidered the case to determine whether new leads or techniques might justify renewed investigation. The cold case storage area maintains controlled environmental conditions that help preserve the documents and evidence contained in the folders. Temperature and humidity levels remain constant to slow the aging process of paper and photographs, while air filtration systems remove pollutants that could accelerate deterioration of stored materials. Each folder receives periodic inspection to identify any signs of damage or deterioration that might require conservation measures. Pages that show signs of brittleness or fading are copied using archival quality materials and techniques that ensure the information remains accessible even if original documents continue to deteriorate. The organization of cold case files follows systems that balance accessibility with preservation requirements. Frequently requested files are stored in locations that minimize handling of surrounding materials, while cases that are seldom reviewed are placed in areas that maximize storage efficiency and environmental protection. Security measures protect the cold case storage area through multiple layers of access control and monitoring. Electronic systems track who enters the area and which files are removed for review, while surveillance cameras record all activity to ensure the integrity of evidence and documentation that might still be needed for legal proceedings. Detective Rodriguez completes his review of selected cold case files as evening approaches, returning each folder to its proper location within the carefully organized storage system. The files will remain in their silent archive, preserving the memories of crimes and investigations that shaped the community's history while waiting for the possibility that new information or techniques might someday provide answers to questions that have remained open for decades. The cold case room settles into the quiet of night shift hours, its contents resting in darkness while maintaining their vigil over unsolved mysteries and unfinished investigations. In the silence between the day's activities and tomorrow's possibilities, the files hold their memories of human drama, police dedication, and the ongoing search for truth and justice that continues even when active investigation has ended. Time passes differently in the cold case archive, measured not by the urgent demands of active investigations, but by the patient preservation of evidence and documentation that might someday prove crucial to understanding events that occurred years or decades in the past. The folders rest in their ordered rows, each one a repository of memories that refuse to fade despite the passage of time and the silence that surrounds them. The old courthouse stands 4 stories above the city streets, its limestone facade bearing the weathered dignity of 8 decades of service to justice. Built in 1943, the building carries the architectural weight of its era in every detail, from the carved eagles that flank the main entrance to the brass fixtures that line corridors designed to inspire respect for the legal process. The structure breathes with the accumulated gravity of thousands of proceedings that have transformed individual crimes into matters of official record and judicial decision. Morning light filters through tall windows set in frames of dark wood that have been polished and maintained since the building's construction. The windows, each composed of multiple panes held together by lead mullions, cast geometric patterns of shadow and illumination across marble floors that have been worn smooth by generations of footsteps. The patterns shift slowly as the sun moves across the sky, creating a natural timepiece that marks the passage of hours within the building's formal spaces. Judge Margaret Shun arrives before the morning session, her footsteps echoing softly in the corridor that leads to her chambers. The hallway, lined with portraits of former judges whose tenure spans the courthouse's entire history, extends the full length of the building's eastern wing. Each portrait, painted in oil and mounted in heavy gilt frames, captures the serious demeanor appropriate to judicial office while reflecting the artistic styles and photographic techniques of different eras. The marble floors, quarried from Vermont and installed during the building's original construction, show the subtle variations in color and grain that distinguish natural stone from artificial materials. The stone has acquired a patina over the decades, its surface polished by countless footsteps to a soft luster that reflects the overhead lighting without creating glare. Between the main walkways, the marble retains more of its original texture, showing the careful craftsmanship of stonemasons who understood their work would endure for generations. Wooden benches line the corridors outside courtrooms, their design reflecting the simple functionality favored in government buildings of the 1940s, made from oak that has darkened with age. The benches show the wear patterns created by people waiting for hearings, trials, and other proceedings that require their presence in the courthouse. The wood has been refinished multiple times over the years, each restoration preserving the original form while accommodating the inevitable effects of heavy use. Courtroom 3 occupies the northwest corner of the second floor, its tall windows providing natural light that supplements the formal chandeliers suspended from a ceiling decorated with plaster moldings that frame geometric patterns painted in muted colors. The courtroom was designed to accommodate the full range of proceedings that might be required in a county seat, from simple hearings to complex trials that could extend over weeks or months. The judge's bench, constructed from the same dark oak used throughout the building, rises above the courtroom floor on a platform that places the presiding judge in clear view of all participants and observers. Behind the bench, the state seal is carved into a wooden panel that serves as a backdrop for judicial proceedings, its design incorporating symbols of justice, law, and governmental authority that remind everyone present of the serious nature of the business conducted in this space. Counsel tables in the courtroom are positioned to provide equal access to the judge while maintaining appropriate separation between prosecution and defense. Each table, made from the same oak as the judge's bench, includes built-in storage areas for documents and exhibits that might be needed during proceedings. The tables show the accumulated marks of decades of use, small scratches and stains that tell the story of countless legal proceedings. The jury box, located to the judge's right, consists of 2 rows of chairs designed to accommodate 12 jurors, plus alternates when required. Each chair can be adjusted for height and includes a small writing surface that can be positioned for note-taking during testimony and arguments. The jury box is separated from the rest of the courtroom by a low wooden barrier that defines the juror's space while allowing them to observe all aspects of the proceedings. A witness stand adjacent to the judge's bench provides a clear view for both the jury and the attorneys questioning witnesses. The stand includes a microphone system that ensures testimony can be heard clearly throughout the courtroom while being recorded by court reporters who document every word spoken during official proceedings. The chair in the witness stand, upholstered in dark leather that has been replaced several times over the years, faces the courtroom in a position that requires witnesses to address their answers to the attorneys and jury rather than the judge. The gallery, separated from the court's working area by a wooden barrier known as the bar, provides seating for family members, reporters, and other observers who have business or interest in the proceedings. The pews, constructed in the same style as church seating of the era, accommodate approximately 60 people in arrangements that provide clear sightlines to the bench and counsel tables while maintaining appropriate respect for the formality of judicial proceedings. Bailiff Thompson arrives early to prepare the courtroom for the day's docket, checking that all equipment functions properly and that the space is arranged according to the specific requirements of scheduled proceedings. His routine includes testing the sound system, arranging exhibits that will be presented during the day's cases, and ensuring that security measures are in place to maintain order during what might be emotionally charged proceedings. The sound system, installed during a renovation in the 1980s, includes microphones at the judge's bench, counsel tables, and witness stand that feed into speakers positioned throughout the courtroom. The system also provides feeds to recording equipment that creates official transcripts of all proceedings, ensuring that every word spoken during trials and hearings becomes part of the permanent legal record. Court reporters begin arriving for the morning session, setting up equipment that will capture every word spoken during the day's proceedings. The stenographic machines they use represent the evolution of court reporting technology, from manual stenotype machines to computerized systems that can produce real-time transcripts for immediate review by judges and attorneys. The court reporters work with practiced efficiency, their fingers moving across specialized keyboards that encode spoken words into symbols that can be translated into written text. The court clerk's office, located adjacent to the main courtroom, serves as the administrative center for all legal proceedings that occur in the building. Filing cabinets line the walls, containing dockets, pleadings, exhibits, and other documents that form the official record of every case that passes through the courthouse. The clerk's staff manages this documentation according to strict legal requirements that ensure the integrity and accessibility of court records. Case files in the clerk's office are organized chronologically and by case type, creating a comprehensive archive of legal proceedings that spans the courthouse's entire operational history. Each file contains the complete documentation required to reconstruct any case should appeals or other legal proceedings require review of trial court actions. The files range from simple traffic violations that generate minimal paperwork to complex criminal cases that produce hundreds of pages of documentation. The filing system used in the clerk's office has evolved over the decades to accommodate changes in legal procedures and technology while maintaining compatibility with older records that remain part of the active archive. Modern computer databases provide rapid access to case information while traditional paper files preserve original documents that might be required for legal proceedings years or decades after their creation. Security measures in the courthouse include both physical barriers and electronic systems designed to protect participants in legal proceedings while maintaining public access to judicial activities. Metal detectors at the main entrance screen all visitors, while surveillance cameras monitor corridors and public areas to ensure that inappropriate behavior can be detected and addressed quickly. The building's design incorporates security features that were considered advanced for the 1940s but have been supplemented over the years with modern technology that addresses contemporary security concerns. Separate entrances for judges and staff, secure areas for holding defendants during proceedings, and panic buttons in each courtroom provide multiple layers of protection for people who work in the building. Holding cells in the courthouse basement provide temporary accommodation for defendants who are brought from jail for hearings and trials. The cells, constructed with reinforced concrete and steel bars, include basic amenities for people who may spend several hours in the courthouse during complex proceedings. The holding area is separate from public spaces in the building, with secure corridors that allow movement of defendants without contact with witnesses, jurors, or other participants in legal proceedings. The law library on the third floor serves attorneys, judges, and self-represented litigants who need access to legal resources for case preparation and research. The library contains bound volumes of statutes, case law, and legal reference materials that represent centuries of legal precedent and legislative action. Reading tables and comfortable chairs provide workspace for people conducting detailed legal research that might require hours of concentrated study. Legal volumes in the library show the physical weight of accumulated law, their leather bindings and gilt lettering reflecting the formal respect accorded to legal authority. The oldest volumes, some dating from the early 20th century, contain handwritten annotations and marginalia that show how previous generations of attorneys and judges interpreted legal principles that continue to influence contemporary proceedings. Modern legal research increasingly relies on computer databases that provide rapid access to vast collections of cases, statutes, and legal commentary. But the physical law library remains important for accessing older materials that may not be available in electronic formats. The library also provides a quiet environment for research and case preparation that many attorneys prefer to busier office settings. Administrative offices throughout the courthouse handle the various support functions required for effective operation of the judicial system. Probation officers, court administrators, victim advocates, and other staff members work in offices designed to provide privacy for sensitive discussions while maintaining accessibility for people who need their services. The probation department occupies several offices on the first floor, where officers meet with individuals who are serving sentences that include supervision requirements. The offices provide private spaces for discussing personal circumstances and legal obligations while maintaining security measures appropriate for working with people who have been convicted of criminal offenses. Victim advocacy services operate from offices designed to provide comfortable, supportive environments for people who are participating in legal proceedings as witnesses or complainants. The offices include conference rooms where victims can meet with prosecutors to prepare for testimony and private spaces where they can wait during proceedings without contact with defendants or their families. Court-appointed attorney services coordinate the representation of defendants who cannot afford private counsel, ensuring that constitutional requirements for legal representation are met in all criminal cases. The office maintains lists of qualified attorneys who are available for appointment and manages the administrative aspects of indigent defense services. The building's heating and cooling systems operate with the quiet efficiency necessary in a facility where proceedings require clear communication and minimal distraction. The systems, upgraded several times since the building's construction, maintain comfortable temperatures while providing the air circulation necessary for good indoor air quality. During long proceedings, maintenance staff work during evening and early morning hours to ensure that the courthouse remains in appropriate condition for its important functions. Their work includes cleaning marble floors, polishing wooden fixtures, maintaining landscaping around the building, and addressing the inevitable repairs required in a structure that serves the public continuously. The basement level of the courthouse contains mechanical equipment, storage areas, and the secure facilities used for defendants during proceedings. The basement design reflects the practical requirements of supporting the building's primary functions while providing secure areas that meet law enforcement needs. Elevator systems, modernized during a major renovation in the 1990s, provide access to all floors for people with mobility limitations while maintaining security controls that prevent unauthorized access to restricted areas. The elevators, faced with marble that matches the corridor floors, operate quietly to avoid disrupting proceedings in nearby courtrooms. Public restrooms throughout the building maintain the formal atmosphere appropriate to a courthouse while providing necessary facilities for people who may spend extended periods in the building during trials and hearings. The restrooms, renovated periodically to meet current accessibility standards, include features that accommodate people with various types of disabilities. A small cafeteria in the basement provides food service for people who must remain in the courthouse during extended proceedings. The cafeteria serves simple meals and beverages that allow jurors, attorneys, and court staff to maintain their strength during long trials without leaving the building. The courthouse parking area, located behind the building, provides secure parking for judges and staff, while offering public parking for people who have business in the courthouse. Security measures in the parking area include lighting and surveillance systems designed to ensure the safety of people arriving for and departing from court proceedings. As evening approaches, the courthouse gradually empties as the day's proceedings conclude and staff members complete their administrative tasks. The building settles into the quiet of evening hours, its corridors echoing with the footsteps of security personnel who maintain watch over the empty courtrooms and offices. Night lighting throughout the courthouse provides security illumination while maintaining appropriate respect for the building's architectural features. The lighting systems, designed to be both functional and aesthetically appropriate, ensure that the building remains secure during overnight hours while preserving its dignified appearance. The courthouse stands as a monument to the principle that justice requires formal procedures and permanent records that preserve the decisions made within its walls. Each case that passes through its courtrooms becomes part of the official record that documents how the community addresses crime and maintains order through legal processes that have evolved over centuries of experience. In the quiet hours between day and night, the courthouse holds the accumulated weight of thousands of decisions that have shaped individual lives and community standards. The building serves as both a practical facility for conducting legal business and a symbol of the commitment to justice that requires permanent institutions capable of preserving and implementing the law across generations. The echo in halls carry the whispers of countless proceedings, the formal language of legal argument, and the solemn pronouncement of sentences that transform criminal acts into matters of official record. In the silence of evening, the courthouse rests in preparation for tomorrow's continuation of the ongoing work of justice that gives meaning to its grand architecture and formal procedures. Asterisk. The morning light filters through lace curtains in a small apartment where Mrs. Eleanor Martinez sits at her kitchen table, reading a letter that arrived in yesterday's mail. The letter, written on official police department letterhead, informs her that a case from 15 years ago has been closed through new DNA evidence. Her hands, weathered by decades of careful work and gentle care, hold the paper with the reverence reserved for documents that carry the weight of memory and resolution. The kitchen table, made from oak that her late husband refinished in the 1980s, bears the accumulated marks of family life spanning 4 decades. Coffee rings from countless morning conversations, small scratches from homework sessions with grandchildren, and the gentle wear patterns created by daily use tell the story of a household that has weathered many seasons of joy and sorrow. Today, the table holds not only the letter but also photographs and newspaper clippings that she has preserved in a manila envelope marked with careful handwriting. Mrs. Martinez opens the envelope with deliberate care, revealing photographs of her daughter Maria taken during high school graduation, family gatherings, and the brief period of young adulthood that ended abruptly on a spring evening 15 years ago. The photographs, protected by clear plastic sleeves, have maintained their color and clarity despite years of careful handling during quiet moments when memory feels particularly present. The police file that generated today's letter contains documentation spanning multiple investigations, witness interviews, and evidence analysis that continued long after media attention moved to other stories. Detective Sarah Kim, who inherited the case 3 years ago, has spent countless hours reviewing files, re-interviewing witnesses, and coordinating with forensic laboratories that developed new techniques for analyzing evidence that seemed inconclusive when originally collected. In a suburban house across town, Robert Chun receives a phone call from the victim services coordinator who explains that the man responsible for the break-in that changed his family's sense of security has been identified through fingerprint matches discovered during an unrelated investigation. Mr. Chun listens quietly, his voice steady as he asks practical questions about court proceedings and notification procedures that will unfold over the coming months. The break-in occurred 7 years ago, while the Chun family was attending their daughter's piano recital. They returned home to find their front door forced open and several rooms disturbed by someone searching for valuables. No family members were harmed, and the financial loss was covered by insurance, but the violation of their private space created lasting changes in how they thought about safety and security in their own home. Mr. Chun's wife, Linda, planted new rose bushes along the front walkway after the break-in, choosing varieties that bloom throughout the growing season and create natural barriers that require anyone approaching the house to follow visible pathways. The roses, now established and blooming in their 7th season, have become part of the family's healing process, their beauty marking the passage of time and the gradual restoration of peace in their daily lives. Chun family's insurance claim, filed immediately after the break-in, documented not only the items that were taken, but also the damage to doors, windows, and furnishings that required repair or replacement. The claim process, handled with patience and understanding by their insurance agent, helped restore their home's physical condition while allowing the family to focus on the emotional recovery that would take much longer. Police reports from the Chun family break-in describe a crime that appeared random but showed signs of planning and familiarity with the neighborhood. The perpetrator apparently observed the family's routines and chose a time when the house would be empty for several hours. Evidence collected from the scene included fingerprints, tool marks, and other traces that remained in the police files awaiting technological advances that would make identification possible. In another part of the city, Margaret Foster tends her garden with the methodical care that has helped her process grief and find meaning in the years following her son's death in a traffic accident caused by a drunk driver. The accident occurred 5 years ago, and the legal proceedings concluded 2 years later with the driver's conviction and imprisonment. Mrs. Foster's garden, expanded each season since the accident, now occupies most of her backyard and produces vegetables that she shares with neighbors and donates to local food pantries. The tomato plants, carefully staked and pruned according to techniques she learned from her mother, represent continuity across generations and the possibility of growth, even in circumstances marked by loss. Each season's harvest provides opportunities to share memories of her son while contributing to her community's well-being through the simple act of growing food and giving it to people who need it. Mrs. Foster's son David worked as a paramedic and planned to attend medical school after completing his undergraduate degree. His death, sudden and unexpected despite his professional familiarity with traffic accidents and their consequences, created a void in the family that could never be filled but has gradually been surrounded by new sources of meaning and connection. The drunk driver who caused David's death received a prison sentence that Mrs. Foster attended but did not oppose. During the victim impact portion of the sentencing hearing, she spoke briefly about her son's life and his commitment to helping others, choosing to focus on his character and aspirations rather than the circumstances of his death or her feelings toward the person responsible. Correspondence between Mrs. Foster and the drunk driver, initiated through the Victim Offender Mediation Program, has continued sporadically over the years since the sentencing. The letters, exchanged through official channels that protect both parties' privacy and safety, explore questions of responsibility, forgiveness, and the possibility of preventing similar tragedies through education and awareness programs. Victim Services Office maintains files on hundreds of families whose lives have been touched by criminal activity, each case representing individual stories of loss, recovery, and the ongoing process of finding meaning after traumatic events. The office staff, trained in trauma-informed care and crisis intervention, provides support that continues long after legal proceedings conclude and media attention moves elsewhere. Asterisk. Family support groups meet monthly in the basement conference room of the community center, where people who have experienced similar losses gather to share experiences and provide mutual support. The meetings, facilitated by trained counselors and attended by both recent victims and people years into their recovery process, create safe spaces for discussing grief, anger, fear, and hope in circumstances that outsiders might find difficult to understand. The conference room, furnished with comfortable chairs arranged in a circle, displays artwork created by group members and their children as part of the healing process. The paintings, photographs, and sculptures reflect personal journeys through grief while contributing to an environment that acknowledges both loss and resilience. Each piece of artwork tells part of someone's story while adding to the collective expression of survival and recovery. Detective Kim visits Mrs. Martinez to deliver the news about the case closure in person, understanding that telephone calls or letters cannot adequately convey the respect and care that such communications require. The visit, conducted in Mrs. Martinez's living room, surrounded by family photographs and mementos, allows for questions and discussion that help families understand the legal and investigative processes that led to resolution. The living room, decorated with furniture that spans several decades of the family's history, reflects the stability and continuity that helped Mrs. Martinez maintain hope during the years when her daughter's case remained unsolved. Religious artifacts, family photographs, and children's artwork create an environment that speaks to faith, family, and the importance of memory in sustaining people through difficult periods. Mrs. Martinez offers Detective Kim coffee served in china cups that belong to her mother, continuing traditions of hospitality that remain important even during discussions of painful subjects. The ritual of serving and sharing refreshments provides structure for conversations that might otherwise be overwhelming, allowing both family members and law enforcement officials to connect as human beings addressing shared concerns about justice and healing. The case files that Detective Kim carries contain not only the technical evidence that led to identification of the perpetrator, but also documentation of the ongoing impact that crimes have on families and communities. Victim impact statements, collected during the original investigation and updated periodically over the years, provide context for understanding how individual crimes create ripple effects that extend far beyond the immediate victims. School counselors who worked with Maria, Martinez's younger siblings, maintain records of the support services provided to help children process the loss of their sister and the changes it created in their family dynamics. The counseling records, protected by confidentiality requirements, but available to support ongoing treatment if needed, document how children's understanding of traumatic events evolves as they mature and gain life experience. Maria's younger brother, now 28 and married with children of his own, has maintained traditions that honor his sister's memory while building a life that incorporates both loss and hope. He and his wife visit Mrs. Martinez weekly, bringing their children to spend time with their grandmother and learn about the aunt they never knew but whose presence remains part of their family story. The grandchildren, ages 4 and 7, know their Aunt Maria through photographs, stories, and the gentle way their grandmother speaks about someone who remains part of the family despite her physical absence. Their understanding of death and loss develops gradually through age-appropriate conversations that help them appreciate both the sadness of loss and the importance of remembering people who were loved. Family traditions established after Maria's death include annual memorial gatherings that bring together extended family and friends to share memories, prepare her favorite foods, and contribute to scholarship funds established in her name. The gatherings, held in Mrs. Martinez's backyard during the season when Maria's favorite flowers bloom, create opportunities for healing and connection across generations. The Scholarship Fund, administered through the local community college where Maria was studying nursing, provides financial assistance to students pursuing healthcare careers. The fund's annual disbursement ceremony includes brief remarks about Maria's life and aspirations, ensuring that her memory contributes to other young people's educational opportunities and career development. Student recipients of the Maria Martinez Memorial Scholarship often write thank you letters that Mrs. Martinez saves in a special folder, alongside other correspondence related to her daughter's memory. The letters, written by young people whose educational dreams are supported by the scholarship, provide evidence that Maria's life continues to make positive differences years after her death. Hospital staff who worked with David Foster during his paramedic training have established their own memorial traditions that honor his commitment to emergency medical care. The traditions include annual training events focused on trauma prevention and an award given to paramedic students who demonstrate exceptional dedication to helping others. The award ceremony includes readings from David's journals and letters that describe his passion for emergency medicine and his plans for using medical training to serve underserved communities. The Foster family's participation in drunk driving prevention programs includes speaking at high school assemblies, supporting legislative initiatives to strengthen drunk driving penalties, and volunteering with organizations that provide alternative transportation for people who have been drinking. Their advocacy work, conducted with quiet determination rather than public anger, reflects their belief that David's death should contribute to preventing similar tragedies. Mrs. Foster's involvement with Mothers Against Drunk Driving provides both support for her own healing process and opportunities to help other families navigate the legal and emotional challenges that follow traffic fatalities. Her participation in victim impact panels, where she shares David's story with people convicted of drunk driving, requires emotional strength but contributes to education efforts that may prevent future crimes. The victim impact panels, held in courthouse conference rooms and treatment facilities, create structured opportunities for people convicted of drunk driving to hear directly from family members affected by similar crimes. The presentations, carefully prepared and delivered with support from trained facilitators, focus on the human consequences of drunk driving rather than punishment or blame. Community gardens established in memory of crime victims provide spaces for families to engage in therapeutic activities while contributing to neighborhood beautification and food security. The gardens, maintained through partnerships between victim services organizations and municipal recreation departments, create living memorials that serve practical community needs while honoring the memory of people whose lives were cut short. The Chun family's participation in neighborhood watch programs reflects their commitment to community safety without allowing fear to dominate their daily lives. Their involvement includes hosting meetings in their backyard, distributing safety information to neighbors, and maintaining communication networks that help residents look out for each other's welfare. Neighborhood watch meetings, held monthly in various homes throughout the subdivision, focus on practical safety measures, communication protocols, and community-building activities that strengthen relationships between neighbors. The meetings include updates from local police officers who provide information about crime trends and prevention strategies without creating unnecessary anxiety about safety issues. The watch program's emphasis on community building rather than surveillance reflects understanding that strong neighborhoods are created through positive relationships rather than fear-based responses to crime. Activities include block parties, holiday celebrations, and service projects that bring neighbors together for positive purposes, while naturally increasing awareness of unusual or suspicious activities. Family therapy sessions, conducted in comfortable office settings designed to put people at ease, help crime victims and their relatives process trauma while developing coping strategies that support long-term healing. The therapy sessions, covered by victim services programs, acknowledge that recovery from crime-related trauma often requires professional support that extends beyond immediate crisis intervention. Therapists who specialize in trauma treatment understand that healing from crime-related loss follows individual timelines and may require different approaches for different family members. Treatment plans are developed collaboratively with families to ensure that interventions respect cultural values, personal preferences, and practical constraints that affect people's ability to participate in therapy services. Support groups for children who have lost parents or siblings to violent crime meet in specially designed rooms filled with toys, art supplies, and other materials that help young people express feelings and experiences that may be difficult to put into words. The groups, facilitated by child psychologists and social workers, provide safe spaces for children to connect with peers who have had similar experiences. Art therapy programs allow both children and adults to explore grief and trauma through creative expression that bypasses some of the limitations of verbal communication. The programs, offered through community mental health centers and victim services organizations, provide materials and instruction for people who want to use painting, sculpture, music, or writing as part of their healing process. Creative works produced in art therapy sessions often become part of memorial displays or community art projects that honor crime victims while contributing to public spaces that serve broader community needs. The artwork, created through therapeutic processes but shared with community permission, helps educate others about the impact of crime while celebrating the resilience and creativity of survivors. Memorial services held on the anniversaries of victims' deaths provide opportunities for families and communities to gather for remembrance and mutual support. The services, planned collaboratively by families and community organizations, often include elements that reflect victims' personalities, interests, and contributions to their communities rather than focusing exclusively on the circumstances of their deaths. Anniversary observances may include tree plantings, garden dedications, scholarship announcements, or other activities that create lasting positive changes in communities while honoring the memory of people who have died. The observances help families mark significant dates while contributing to community improvements that serve as living memorials. As evening settles over the city, families touched by crime continue their daily routines of preparing dinner, helping children with homework, and maintaining the ordinary activities that provide structure and meaning in lives that have been disrupted by extraordinary circumstances. Their resilience appears not in dramatic gestures, but in the quiet persistence with which they rebuild normalcy while honoring the memory of those they have lost. In apartments and houses throughout the community, photographs of loved ones occupy places of honor on mantelpieces, kitchen tables, and bedroom dressers where they provide daily reminders of lives that continue to matter despite physical absence. The photographs, some professional portraits and others casual snapshots, capture moments of joy and connection that remain meaningful years after they were taken. Police files that document the resolution of cases affecting these families will be archived according to departmental procedures, but the impact of the crimes and their investigation continues in the ongoing lives of people who found ways to survive loss while maintaining hope for justice and healing. Their stories, written not in official reports, but in the quiet persistence of daily life, demonstrate that recovery from trauma is possible even when healing remains incomplete. The gentle passage of time brings both the gradual lessening of acute grief and the deepening understanding that love for those who have died can coexist with engagement in life among those who remain. Families learn to carry loss alongside hope, memory alongside new experience, and sorrow alongside the possibility of joy that returns gradually to lives that seemed permanently changed by crime and violence. In the quiet hours before sleep, family members say prayers, look at photographs, and remember loved ones in private moments that sustain connection across the divide between life and death. These intimate rituals, unwitnessed and unrecorded, provide the foundation for healing that allows families to continue loving both those who remain and those who are gone. The evidence room hums with the gentle circulation of filtered air that maintains constant temperature and humidity to preserve the thousands of items stored within its climate-controlled environment. Property Officer Williams begins her night shift by reviewing the intake log, checking each entry against the physical items that arrived during the day, and ensuring that every piece of evidence has been properly cataloged and secured according to departmental protocols. Fluorescent lights cast even illumination across rows of metal shelving that extend from floor to ceiling, each shelf marked with numbers and letters that correspond to the computerized tracking system. Every item in the room, from the smallest fiber sample to the largest piece of furniture, has its designated location within a grid system that allows rapid location of any evidence regardless of how long it has been stored. Cardboard evidence boxes, manufactured specifically for archival storage, line the shelves in neat rows according to case numbers and dates. Each box bears labels printed with information that includes the case number, incident date, type of evidence, and location where items were collected. The labels, designed to remain legible for decades, use archival quality paper and fade-resistant ink that will maintain readability long after the cases they represent have been resolved. The first item on Williams' evening checklist is a brown paper bag containing clothing collected from a burglary scene earlier in the week. The bag, folded and stapled according to evidence collection protocols, protects fabric evidence from contamination while allowing air circulation that prevents the growth of mold or bacteria that could destroy forensic value. Each fold in the paper follows specific techniques designed to maintain the integrity of trace evidence that might be transferred between different surfaces. She opens the bag carefully, using tools specifically designed for evidence examination that prevent contamination between different items. The clothing inside consists of a jacket and gloves, apparently dropped by someone fleeing the scene, their fabric showing tears and stains that might provide DNA evidence or other forensic information useful for identifying the perpetrator. The jacket, made from denim that shows significant wear, contains pocket contents that were inventoried separately but remain associated with the garment through detailed labeling systems. Each pocket yielded different items, loose change, a receipt from a convenience store, and fibers that appear to come from another garment, possibly indicating contact with an accomplice or evidence of where the suspect had been before committing the crime. Microscopic examination of the jacket's fabric reveals embedded particles that could come from the crime scene environment, providing potential evidence links between the suspect and the location where the burglary occurred. The particles, invisible to casual observation, require specialized lighting and magnification, equipment to identify and collect for further analysis. Williams photographs the jacket from multiple angles using cameras equipped with macro lenses that capture fine details not visible to normal observation. The photographs become part of the permanent case record, documenting the condition and appearance of evidence at the time it was processed for storage. Each photograph includes a ruler for scale reference and color standards that ensure accurate reproduction if the images are needed for court presentations. Gloves found with the jacket show different types of evidence, including what appears to be paint transfer from a window frame that was damaged during the break-in. The paint samples, barely visible as tiny flakes adhering to the glove material, could provide definitive proof that these gloves were used during the commission of the crime if laboratory analysis confirms a match with paint from the crime scene evidence. Collection from the gloves requires techniques that preserve both the original glove material and any transferred substances without cross-contamination between different types of evidence. Williams uses specialized tools to collect paint samples while documenting their exact location on the gloves through detailed photography and written descriptions that could be used to recreate the collection process if required for legal proceedings. Sealed manila envelope marked with red evidence tape contains photographs taken at the burglary scene, each image documenting different aspects of the crime and its aftermath. The photographs, printed on archival quality paper using techniques that resist fading and chemical degradation, provide visual documentation that supplements written reports and helps investigators understand spatial relationships that might not be clear from text descriptions alone. Crime scene photographs follow standardized protocols that ensure comprehensive documentation of evidence locations, damage patterns, and environmental conditions that might affect interpretation of physical evidence. Overall views establish the general layout of the scene, while detailed close-up images capture specific evidence items and their relationship to surrounding areas. The photographer's log, included with the prints, records the time, lighting conditions, camera settings, and specific purpose for each image in the collection. This documentation ensures that photographs can be authenticated for court use and provides context for understanding what each image was intended to show. Williams examines each photograph using a magnifying glass and bright task lighting that reveals details not immediately apparent in normal viewing conditions. The images show tool marks on a forced window frame, footprint impressions in soft soil outside the building, and patterns of disturbance inside rooms that were searched by the perpetrator. Tool mark evidence visible in the photographs could potentially be matched to implements found in suspects' possession, providing direct physical links between individuals and criminal activity. The marks show characteristic patterns created by specific tools, with unique wear patterns and damage that make each tool identifiable through forensic comparison techniques. A small cardboard box contains fingerprint evidence collected from various surfaces at the crime scene, each print lifted using techniques appropriate to the surface where it was found. Glass surfaces yielded clear prints that were lifted using specialized powders and tape, while porous surfaces required chemical treatments that revealed latent prints, invisible to normal observation. The fingerprint collection includes both complete prints and partial impressions that might still provide enough detail for comparison with known prints from suspects or database searches. Each print is mounted on cards that include detailed information about where it was found, the collection technique used, and the analyst who processed the evidence. Fingerprint analysis requires comparison of ridge patterns, minutia points, and other characteristics that remain constant throughout an individual's lifetime. The prints collected from the burglary scene will be compared with prints from arrested suspects and searched against databases that contain millions of prints from previous arrests and background investigations. Photography of fingerprint evidence uses specialized lighting and filters that enhance ridge detail and eliminate distracting background patterns. The photographs provide permanent records of print quality and photographs per permanent records of print quality, characteristics that might deteriorate over time if only the original lifted prints were preserved. A larger evidence box contains tools apparently used during the burglary, including a pry bar and screwdriver that were found discarded near the crime scene. The tools show wear patterns and damage that could be matched to marks found at the scene, providing potential physical evidence linking these implements to the commission of the crime. Each tool receives individual documentation that includes detailed photography, measurements, and examination for trace evidence that might have transferred from the crime scene. The pry bar shows fresh scratches and paint transfer that correspond to damage observed at the forced entry point, while the screwdriver contains fibers that might match window coverings that were damaged during the break-in. Microscopic examination of the tools reveals embedded materials that could provide additional forensic evidence if laboratory analysis confirms their origin from the crime scene. The examination requires specialized equipment that can magnify surface details hundreds of times while maintaining focus and lighting that reveals trace evidence invisible to normal observation. Evidence tags attached to each tool include chain of custody documentation that tracks every person who has handled the item since their collection. The tags ensure legal admissibility by providing an unbroken record of evidence location and handling from crime scene to courtroom. Williams moves to another section of the evidence room where items from older cases await periodic review and potential disposition according to legal requirements. A shelf holds boxes from cases that were resolved years ago but must be maintained until all appeal periods expire and civil proceedings are concluded. One box from a case closed 3 years ago contains clothing that was seized during a search warrant execution. The clothing, individually packaged and labeled, shows the careful attention to detail required when multiple items from the same source must be kept separate to prevent cross-contamination of trace evidence. Each garment was examined for blood evidence, fiber transfers, and other trace materials that might connect the wearer to criminal activity. The examination reports, filed with the clothing, document the findings from each item and provide the scientific foundation for any testimony that might be required if the case proceeds to trial or appeal. DNA evidence from the clothing required extraction and analysis using techniques that preserve genetic material while providing sufficient sample for comparison with known individuals. The DNA analysis reports include statistical information about the likelihood of matches and detailed descriptions of laboratory procedures that ensure reliability and admissibility of results. Photographs and evidence storage show the gradual evolution of forensic photography techniques over the decades represented in the archive. Earlier photographs, taken with film cameras and processed in traditional darkrooms, show the characteristic grain structure and contrast of analog photography, while more recent images demonstrate the improved resolution and color accuracy available through digital techniques. Each photograph includes a case number and date stamp that places it within the chronological record of investigation activities. The stamps, created using equipment designed specifically for evidence documentation, resist alteration and provide authentication that supports the admissibility of photographic evidence in legal proceedings. Color reference cards included in many photographs ensure that accurate color reproduction is possible even years after images were originally captured. The cards contain standard colors that remain stable over time and provide comparison standards for evaluating any color shifts that might occur during storage or reproduction. A climate-controlled storage area within the evidence room houses items that require special environmental conditions to prevent deterioration. Documents, photographs, and biological samples stored in this area benefit from reduced temperature and humidity that slow the chemical processes responsible for degradation of organic materials. The controlled environment uses monitoring systems that continuously track temperature and humidity, while providing alarms if conditions exceed acceptable parameters. The systems ensure that valuable evidence remains stable for years or decades while investigations, prosecutions, and appeals run their course through the legal system. Evidence requiring refrigeration or freezing is stored in specialized units designed specifically for forensic applications. These units maintain precise temperature control while providing separate storage areas that prevent cross-contamination between different cases or types of evidence. Biological evidence, including blood samples and tissue specimens, requires careful handling and storage that preserves DNA and other genetic material for potential future analysis. The storage protocols follow guidelines established by forensic laboratories and legal authorities to ensure that evidence retains its scientific and legal validity regardless of how long storage continues. Williams reviews inventory records that track every item in the evidence room ensuring that computer databases accurately reflect the physical location and condition of stored materials. The inventory system uses barcode technology that provides rapid identification and location of any item while maintaining detailed records of access and handling. Barcode scanners reduce the possibility of human error in inventory management while providing automated documentation of evidence handling activities. The scanners create permanent records of who accessed which items and when, supporting chain of custody requirements and helping identify any discrepancies that might affect evidence integrity. Regular inventory audits verify that all items remain in their assigned locations and that storage conditions continue to meet required standards. The audits follow detailed checklists that ensure systematic examination of all storage areas and documentation systems that support evidence management. Security cameras throughout the evidence room record all activities to provide additional documentation of evidence handling and security procedures. The cameras operate continuously, creating recordings that are stored according to legal requirements and available for review if questions arise about evidence integrity or handling procedures. Motion detectors and alarm systems protect the evidence room during hours when staff members are not present, ensuring that unauthorized access attempts are detected and reported immediately. The security systems interface with the building's central monitoring station, providing multiple layers of protection for valuable evidence. Access to the evidence room requires multiple authentication methods, including key cards, personal identification numbers, and biometric recognition systems that ensure only authorized personnel can enter the storage areas. The access systems create detailed logs of entry and exit times while preventing unauthorized individuals from contaminating or tampering with evidence. The night shift provides opportunities for detailed evidence processing that might be difficult to accomplish during busier day shift hours. Williams uses this time to conduct thorough examinations of complex evidence items that require extended periods of careful analysis and documentation. Microscopic examination of trace evidence requires concentration and attention to detail that benefits from the quiet environment available during the overnight hours. The examination processes often extend over several hours as analysts work systematically through evidence items to identify and document all potentially significant findings. Laboratory equipment used for evidence analysis includes microscopes with specialized lighting systems, chemical analysis instruments, and photography equipment designed specifically for forensic applications. The equipment requires regular calibration and maintenance to ensure accurate and reliable results that will withstand scrutiny in court proceedings. Documentation of evidence analysis follows standardized formats that ensure consistency and completeness regardless of which analyst performs the work. The standardization helps ensure that different analysts reach similar conclusions when examining the same evidence and that reports contain all information necessary for legal proceedings. Quality control procedures verify the accuracy and reliability of evidence analysis through duplicate testing, peer review, and comparison with known standards. The procedures help identify potential errors or inconsistencies before reports are finalized and reduce the likelihood of problems arising during court proceedings. As the night progresses, Williams completes her systematic review of evidence items, updating computer records and preparing documentation that will support ongoing investigations and legal proceedings. Her work ensures that the accumulated evidence from dozens of cases remains properly preserved and accessible for future use. The evidence room maintains its silent vigil over the physical remnants of criminal activity, preserving proof and documentation that may prove crucial to achieving justice in cases that continue to work their way through investigation and prosecution processes. Each item in storage represents someone's effort to find truth and accountability for actions that disrupted the normal patterns of community life. In the quiet hours before dawn, the evidence room rests under the protection of security systems and environmental controls that ensure its contents remain stable and secure. The accumulated evidence from years of police work waits patiently for the continuation of legal processes that will determine how individual cases are resolved and what consequences follow from the crimes they represent. The gentle hum of air circulation and the soft glow of security lighting create an atmosphere of watchful preservation, where memory takes physical form in the carefully cataloged items that document humanity's ongoing struggle with crime and the persistent effort to maintain justice through systematic collection and preservation of truth. Asterisk, the final report slides into place within the manila folder, its typed pages joining the accumulated documentation that transforms an active investigation into a closed case. Detective Sarah Kim fastens the metal clasp that will hold the content secure during their journey to the archives, where this particular story will join thousands of others in the vast repository of resolved mysteries and answered questions. The case folder, thick with photographs, witness statements, evidence logs, and investigative reports, represents 6 months of careful work that began with a filed, simple burglary report and concluded with the arrest and conviction of 3 individuals whose criminal partnership had been disrupting the community for over a year. The folder's weight speaks to the thoroughness required to build a case that would satisfy both legal requirements and the community's need for closure. Mrs. Patterson receives the closed case file in the records room, where morning light filters through tall windows, casting familiar patterns across the organized landscape of archived investigations. She examines the folder's contents one final time, ensuring that all required documentation is present and properly arranged before the case takes its place among the solved mysteries that line the walls of the archive. The filing system that will receive this case has accommodated thousands of similar folders over the decades, each one representing the successful conclusion of police work that began with someone's call for help and ended with the restoration of order and accountability. The system's organization reflects years of experience with the practical requirements of maintaining accessible records while preserving the documentary evidence of community safety efforts. The metal filing cabinet opens with a soft whisper of well-maintained hardware, revealing rows of folders arranged in chronological order according to case closure dates. The new folder slides into place between cases that were resolved days earlier and others that concluded weeks ago, becoming part of the continuous record of police work that proceeds regardless of seasons or circumstances. Each folder in the cabinet tells a complete story from initial report through final resolution, documenting not only the facts of criminal activity, but also the methodical process through which those facts were discovered, verified, and presented to the judicial system. The folders collectively represent the community's ongoing effort to maintain safety and order through the patient application of investigative techniques and legal procedures. The archive room maintains its characteristic quiet, disturbed only by the soft sounds of paper handling and the gentle circulation of air that preserves the documents contained. Within its climate-controlled environment, Mrs. Patterson moves through her daily routine with practiced efficiency, filing new cases while retrieving older ones for the various administrative and legal purposes that continue long after investigations conclude. Boxes containing case files from previous decades occupy higher shelves where they rest undisturbed, except for occasional research requests or appeals, processes that require examination of historical records. The boxes, constructed from acid-free cardboard and designed for archival storage, protect their contents from light, moisture, and other environmental factors that could degrade paper documents over time. A ladder provides access to the higher shelves where the oldest cases reside, their boxes labeled with dates that stretch back to the 1960s, when the current filing system was established. Mrs. Patterson climbs carefully to reach a box from 1978, retrieving it for a researcher who is conducting a historical study of crime patterns in police Response methods during different periods of the city's development. The 1978 box opens to reveal files that show the evolution of police documentation over the decades, with typewritten reports on letterhead that reflects the design standards of earlier eras. The paper has acquired a slight yellowing with age, but the text remains clearly legible, and the organization follows principles that remain consistent with current practice. Each file in the historical collection provides insights into how police work has evolved while maintaining fundamental commitments to thorough investigation and careful documentation. Changes in technology, legal requirements, and social understanding have influenced investigative methods, but the basic principles of evidence collection and case development show remarkable consistency across generations of police work. The researcher, a graduate student writing a dissertation about urban crime patterns, handles the historical files with appropriate care while extracting statistical information and case details that will contribute to academic understanding of how communities respond to criminal activity over time. Her work represents one way that closed police cases continue to serve useful purposes long after their immediate law enforcement function has been completed. Statistical analysis of closed cases reveals patterns that help police administrators understand resource allocation, training needs, and community safety trends that influence departmental planning and policy development. The analysis requires access to large numbers of case files, making the archive's organizational system crucial for supporting research that improves police effectiveness. Computer databases now supplement the traditional paper filing system, providing rapid access to case information while preserving detailed documentation in physical files that may be required for legal proceedings or administrative reviews. The combination of electronic and paper systems ensures redundancy that protects against information loss while accommodating different types of research and reference needs. Detective Kim begins the process of closing another case, this one involving a series of vandalism incidents that was solved through patient investigation and community cooperation. The case file will join hundreds of others that document how persistent police work and citizen involvement combine to address problems that initially seem impossible to solve. The vandalism investigation required 3 months of systematic work that included reviewing security camera footage, interviewing witnesses, and analyzing physical evidence from multiple crime scenes. The breakthrough came when a witness provided information that connected the incidents to a specific group of individuals, leading to arrests and prosecution that resulted in restitution payments and community service. Requirements. Community involvement in the vandalism case included business owners who preserved security footage, residents who reported suspicious activity, and neighborhood organizations that helped coordinate information sharing between police and citizens. The cooperation demonstrated how effective crime solving often depends on partnerships between law enforcement and community members who have knowledge and observations that prove crucial for investigations. The resolution of the vandalism case brings satisfaction not only to police officers who conducted the investigation but also to community members who experienced the crimes and participated in efforts to address them. The sense of closure that comes with successful prosecution helps restore confidence in community safety and demonstrates that persistent criminal activity will face appropriate consequences. Property. Officer Williams completes the final inventory of evidence related to recently closed cases, preparing items for different types of disposition according to legal requirements and departmental policies. Some evidence will be returned to owners who can reclaim property that was stolen or seized during investigations, while other items will be destroyed according to protocols that ensure proper handling of materials that are no longer needed. The evidence disposition process requires careful attention to legal requirements that govern how different types of physical evidence must be handled after cases conclude. Weapons may require destruction under controlled conditions. while personal property is returned to rightful owners through procedures that verify identity and ownership rights. Documentation of evidence disposition creates permanent records of how items were handled after their evidentiary value was no longer needed, providing accountability for police stewardship of property and materials that came into official custody during investigations. The documentation ensures that disposal procedures can be reviewed and verified if questions arise years later. A truck arrives at the police station to collect boxes of files that will be transferred to a separate storage facility where older records are maintained according to state requirements for document retention. The transfer represents another stage in the life cycle of police records, moving from active investigation files to archive storage while maintaining accessibility for legitimate research and legal purposes. Workers load boxes onto the truck with care appropriate to handling important historical documents, using procedures that protect the files from damage during transportation and storage in facilities specifically designed for long-term preservation of government records. Each box is checked against inventory lists that ensure accurate tracking of file locations and contents. The storage facility that receives transferred police files operates according to strict environmental and security standards that preserve documents for decades while providing controlled access for authorized users. The facility represents society's commitment to maintaining historical records that document law enforcement activities and provide accountability for government actions. Archive staff at the storage facility organize transferred files according to systems that integrate new materials with existing collections while maintaining the organizational structure that makes specific records accessible when needed. The integration process requires careful attention to filing systems and indexing methods that ensure records remain useful for future research and legal purposes. Back at the police station, the daily rhythm of case closure continues as investigators complete reports, prosecutors file final paperwork, and administrative staff update database records that track case status and outcomes. Each step in the closure process contributes to the transformation of active investigations into historical records that document community safety efforts. Court clerks receive copies of final reports and evidence inventories that complete the judicial record for cases that proceeded through prosecution and sentencing. The court records integrate with police files to create comprehensive documentation of how individual cases move through the entire criminal justice system from initial report to final resolution. Victim services coordinators contact family members and other affected parties to notify them about case closure and provide information about the outcomes of investigations and prosecutions. The notifications represent the human dimension of case closure, ensuring that people who were directly affected by crimes understand how their cases were resolved. Some case closures bring satisfaction and relief to victims and their families, while others leave questions unanswered or provide outcomes that feel inadequate given the harm that was experienced. Victim services staff are trained to handle both types of responses with sensitivity and support that acknowledges the complex emotions that accompany the end of legal proceedings. The community impact of case closure extends beyond individual victims to include neighborhood residents, business owners, and others who were affected by criminal activity or concerned about public safety. Information about case resolution is shared through community meetings, police reports, and news releases that help maintain public confidence in law enforcement effectiveness. Statistical reports summarizing case closure rates and outcomes provide transparency about police performance while helping community leaders understand public safety trends and resource needs. The reports contribute to informed discussion about law enforcement priorities and community safety strategies. As evening approaches, the police station settles into the quieter rhythm of night shift operations while the day's completed cases join the vast archive of resolved investigations that represent decades of community policing efforts. Each closed case contributes to the accumulated record of how society addresses criminal activity through systematic investigation and legal process. Filing cabinets throughout the station hold thousands of completed cases, their contents organized according to systems that preserve both individual case details and the broader patterns that emerge from systematic record keeping. The files represent more than bureaucratic documentation. They constitute society's memory of its ongoing struggle with crime and its commitment to justice through legal process. The physical weight of accumulated case files reflects the substantial effort required to maintain community safety through careful investigation and prosecution of criminal activity. Each folder represents hours of police work, court proceedings, and administrative processing that transforms individual incidents into official records of community response to crime. Night lighting throughout the police station provides gentle illumination that maintains security while respecting the quiet atmosphere appropriate to evening hours. The lights cast soft shadows across empty corridors and offices where the day's work in crime fighting and case resolution has been completed. Security systems monitor the building and its contents through electronic surveillance that operates continuously to protect both personnel and the valuable records that document years of police work. The systems provide multiple layers of protection while maintaining the accessibility required for legitimate law enforcement and administrative functions. Cleaning staff work quietly through the building during evening hours, maintaining the professional environment required for effective police operations while showing appropriate respect for the serious nature of the work conducted. In offices and meeting rooms where cases are investigated and resolved, the evidence room rests under environmental controls that preserve thousands of items, while security systems ensure that valuable evidence remains protected during overnight hours. Property officers have completed their documentation and storage tasks, leaving evidence properly secured and inventoried for whatever future needs may arise. Archive storage areas maintain their climate-controlled environments throughout the night, preserving case files and documentation under conditions that slow aging and deterioration, while ensuring that records remain accessible for future research and legal requirements. As midnight approaches, the police station continues its essential functions, while case files rest in their organized storage systems, holding the accumulated memory of community safety efforts that span generations of police work. The files preserve not only the details of individual crimes and investigations, but also the broader story of how society maintains order through patient application of legal principles and investigative techniques. In the quiet hours before dawn, closed case files occupy their places in the vast archive of police work, their contents representing resolved mysteries and answered questions that once concerned community members and challenged investigators. The files rest in silence while maintaining their availability for future reference and review. The accumulated weight of closed cases creates a sense of accomplishment and progress in the ongoing effort to maintain community safety and accountability for criminal behavior. Each solved case represents not only successful police work, but also the community's commitment to justice through systematic investigation and legal process. Storage systems throughout the police station and archive facilities hold case files in organized arrangements that reflect decades of experience, with record-keeping requirements and access needs. The organization ensures that resolved cases remain available for legitimate purposes while protecting confidential information and maintaining appropriate security. Time passes slowly in archive storage areas where closed case files rest in environmental conditions designed to preserve their contents for years or decades while investigations, prosecutions, and appeals continue their courses through the legal system. The files maintain their silent vigil over evidence and documentation that may prove crucial for ongoing legal proceedings. The gentle circulation of filtered air maintains optimal conditions for document preservation while security systems provide continuous protection for valuable records that represent substantial investments of time and resources in community safety efforts. The protection ensures that case files remain intact and accessible for whatever future purposes may require their contents. In the deepest quiet of night, case files rest in their organized storage, each folder containing a complete story of criminal activity discovered, investigated, and resolved through the patient application of police work and legal process. The files collectively represent society's memory of its encounter with crime and its ongoing commitment to justice. The night swallows the police station and its archives in gentle darkness while case files maintain their positions in storage systems, designed to preserve and protect the documentary evidence of community safety efforts. In this silence, the completed work of investigation and prosecution rests alongside the ongoing vigilance that ensures community safety continues regardless of the hour. Cases close with quiet finality as files slide into their permanent places among thousands of others that document the community's persistent effort to address criminal activity through systematic investigation and legal accountability. Each closure represents both an ending and a contribution to the ongoing work of maintaining safety and order in a world where crime requires constant attention and response. The archive settles into the profound quiet of night while holding the accumulated memory of justice sought and achieved through patient police work and legal process. In this silence, the stories rest complete, their investigations finished, their questions answered, their place in the community's history secured for as long as memory endures. The deep hours after midnight find the city wrapped in layers of silence that settle like soft blankets over empty streets and sleeping neighborhoods. In this profound quiet, when most citizens rest in the safety of their homes, a different rhythm emerges, the gentle pulse of vigilance that never ceases, the watchful presence that guards the boundaries between order and chaos while the world dreams. Officer Maria Santos begins her patrol route through residential streets where porch lights create pools of warm illumination against the velvet darkness. Her patrol car moves with deliberate slowness, its headlights sweeping across sidewalks and driveways where nothing stirs except the occasional cat crossing between shadows. The radio remains quiet except for periodic check-ins that confirm all units remain operational in their designated sectors. The neighborhoods she patrols hold thousands of sleeping residents whose peaceful rest depends on the invisible network of protection that operates while they remain unaware of its presence. Behind windows glowing with soft night lights, families sleep in beds arranged in rooms where personal belongings tell stories of ordinary lives unfolding in security and routine. Children's bicycles rest on front lawns where they were abandoned after evening play, their bright colors muted by darkness, but their presence speaking to the trust that allows such casual neglect of valuable possessions. The bicycles will remain undisturbed until morning, protected by the combination of community awareness and police vigilance that maintains neighborhood safety. In apartment complexes throughout the city, security lights illuminate parking areas and walkways where residents' cars sit in neat rows, their windows and doors secure for the night. The vehicles, representing significant investments for their owners, remain safe through the coordinated efforts of property management, resident awareness, and patrol officers who include these areas in their regular surveillance routes. The community college campus spreads across several blocks, where landscaped walkways connect buildings that stand empty during overnight hours. Campus security officers coordinate with city police to maintain coverage of areas where students, faculty, and staff will return in the morning to continue their educational activities in buildings that have been protected throughout the night. Library buildings throughout the city hold millions of books and other materials that represent substantial public investments in education and culture. The buildings stand dark and secure, their contents protected by alarm systems and regular patrol checks that ensure these community resources remain available for public use. Public parks close to vehicle traffic during overnight hours but remain accessible to pedestrians who might need to traverse the city on foot. Park maintenance crews work quietly during these hours, preparing recreational facilities for the next day's activities, while police patrols ensure that the parks serve legitimate transportation needs without becoming venues for inappropriate activities. Officer Santos stops her patrol car near a small neighborhood park where playground equipment sits silent in the darkness. The swings hang motionless in the still air, their chains occasionally moving with gentle sounds that seem amplified by the surrounding quiet. During daylight hours, this space fills with the laughter and energy of children at play, but now it rests in preparation for tomorrow's continuation of childhood joy. The playground equipment, constructed according to modern safety standards and maintained through regular inspection programs, represents the community's investment in providing safe recreational opportunities for its youngest residents. The equipment stands ready for morning use, protected overnight by the vigilance that ensures public facilities remain secure and undamaged. Streetlights throughout the park create patterns of illumination that allow safe passage for anyone who might need to use the walkways during overnight hours, while providing sufficient visibility for patrol officers to observe any unusual activity. The lighting design balances public safety needs with energy efficiency and respect for nearby residents who require darkness for peaceful sleep. Patrol radio crackles softly with a routine check-in from another unit working a different sector of the city. The brief exchange confirms that all officers remain safe and alert while maintaining their watch over various neighborhoods and business districts. The communication provides reassurance that the network of protection operates smoothly throughout the entire community. Downtown business districts present different security challenges during overnight hours when office buildings, retail stores, and restaurants stand empty except for minimal security personnel. Patrol officers coordinate with private security companies to ensure comprehensive coverage of areas where valuable equipment and merchandise require protection from theft and vandalism. The main commercial street that bustles with activity during business hours now lies empty except for the occasional delivery truck making early morning preparations for the day's commerce. Storefront windows display merchandise that remains secure behind protective glass and alarm systems that connect to monitoring centers staffed around the clock. Bank buildings receive particular attention during overnight patrols. Their ATM machines and secure facilities representing attractive targets for criminal activity. Officers conduct regular security checks of financial institutions while remaining alert for any signs of suspicious activity in surrounding areas where individuals might conduct surveillance of potential targets. Medical facilities throughout the city operate continuously, providing emergency services and patient care that cannot be interrupted by darkness or quiet hours. Hospital parking areas and emergency room entrances receive regular patrol attention to ensure that patients and medical staff can access healthcare services safely at any hour. The fire department maintains stations throughout the city where firefighters sleep in quarters designed to allow rapid response to emergency calls. Police officers coordinate with fire personnel to ensure that emergency response routes remain clear and that mutual aid is available when incidents require both police and fire department resources. Emergency medical services operate from stations positioned to provide rapid response to medical emergencies throughout the city. Ambulance crews rest between calls while maintaining readiness to respond to heart attacks, accidents, and other medical situations that occur without regard to time or convenience. The dispatch center coordinates all emergency services through communication systems that connect police, fire, and medical personnel with residents who need assistance. Dispatchers work through the night hours, handling calls that range from minor disturbances to life-threatening emergencies that require immediate response. 911 calls during overnight hours often involve domestic disturbances, medical emergencies, and security concerns that require sensitive handling by dispatchers who must gather accurate information. while providing appropriate guidance to callers who may be frightened or confused. The dispatcher's training includes techniques for remaining calm while managing situations that could deteriorate rapidly without proper intervention. Mental health crisis calls increase during overnight hours when individuals experiencing psychological distress may feel most isolated and vulnerable. Police officers receive specialized training in crisis intervention techniques that allow them to de-escalate situations while connecting people with appropriate mental health resources and support services. The city's mental health emergency response team includes trained counselors who can be called to assist with situations that require professional intervention beyond what patrol officers can provide. The team operates around the clock, providing expert assistance that helps resolve crisis situations while connecting individuals with ongoing treatment and support services. Homeless outreach workers coordinate with police officers to provide assistance to individuals who lack permanent housing and may be sleeping in public areas during cold weather or other challenging conditions. The outreach efforts focus on connecting people with shelter services and social support rather than punitive measures that would worsen their circumstances. Homeless shelters throughout the city provide temporary housing for individuals and families who lack permanent homes, operating according to policies that balance public safety concerns with compassionate assistance for people experiencing difficult circumstances. Police officers maintain cooperative relationships with shelter staff to address any security issues while supporting the shelter's mission of providing safe temporary housing. Public transportation continues to operate during overnight hours, unlimited schedules that serve workers whose employment requires travel during times when most people are sleeping. Bus stops and transit facilities receive regular patrol attention to ensure that public transportation remains safe and accessible for legitimate users. The regional airport operates continuously, with flights arriving and departing throughout the night hours that serve business and personal travel needs. Airport security coordinates with local police to maintain comprehensive protection for travelers and airport facilities while ensuring that transportation services continue without interruption. Industrial areas of the city include manufacturing facilities and warehouses that operate around the clock to meet production schedules and supply chain requirements. These facilities often employ their own security personnel who coordinate with police patrols to maintain comprehensive protection of valuable equipment and materials. Railroad corridors that traverse the city carry freight trains throughout the night hours, transporting goods between distant cities according to schedules that maximize efficiency of the national transportation network. Railroad police work with local law enforcement to ensure security of rail facilities and prevent unauthorized access to railroad property. The port area handles cargo operations that continue through overnight hours to accommodate shipping schedules that connect the city with national and international trade networks. Port security coordinates with various law enforcement agencies to maintain protection of facilities and cargo while ensuring that legitimate commerce continues without interruption. University dormitories house thousands of students who sleep in relative security provided by campus security personnel and residence hall staff who maintain watch over buildings where young people live away from their family homes for the first time. The security measures balance safety needs with the freedom and independence that college students require for their educational and personal development. Graduate student housing complexes provide homes for older students and their families, creating residential communities that require security appropriate to their specific needs and circumstances. The housing developments often include playgrounds and common areas that serve families with children while maintaining safety standards appropriate to residential environments. Military installations in the region maintain their own security forces while coordinating with local law enforcement when situations arise that require mutual assistance or shared jurisdiction. The coordination ensures that military and civilian communities can coexist peacefully while maintaining appropriate security for sensitive facilities and operations. Federal buildings throughout the city receive protection from various law enforcement agencies that work together to ensure security of government facilities while maintaining public access to government services. The coordination requires careful attention to jurisdictional boundaries and communication, protocols that prevent conflicts between different agencies. The Regional Medical Center operates trauma facilities that serve a multi-county area, requiring emergency helicopter landing areas and specialized equipment for treating the most serious injuries and medical conditions. Police officers receive training in securing landing zones and providing assistance during medical, helicopter operations that may occur at any hour. Veterinary emergency clinics provide medical care for animals whose injuries or illnesses cannot wait for regular business hours. The clinics serve pet owners who need immediate medical attention for their animals, as well as wildlife rehabilitation efforts that require professional veterinary care. Animal control services operate during overnight hours to respond to calls about stray animals, wildlife in inappropriate locations, and animal-related emergencies that pose risks to public safety. Animal control officers work closely with police to handle situations that involve both animal welfare and public safety concerns. The Regional Water Treatment Facility operates continuously to ensure safe drinking water for the entire metropolitan area, requiring security measures that protect critical infrastructure while allowing necessary maintenance and operational activities. Security personnel coordinate with local police to maintain protection of facilities that serve essential public health needs. Electric power generation and distribution facilities require around-the-clock security to protect infrastructure that provides essential services to residential, commercial, and industrial customers throughout the region. Utility security forces work with law enforcement agencies to ensure that power facilities remain secure while maintaining reliable electrical service. Natural gas distribution systems include pumping stations and storage facilities that require continuous monitoring and security to prevent accidents and unauthorized access that could pose serious public safety risks. Emergency response plans coordinate various agencies to handle any situations that might arise at natural gas facilities. Communications infrastructure includes radio towers, telephone switching facilities, and internet servers that require protection to ensure continued operation of communication systems that serve both civilian and emergency service needs. The facilities often employ their own security while coordinating with local law enforcement for comprehensive protection. Highway patrol officers work with local police to maintain security on interstate highways and major roads that carry traffic through the metropolitan area 24 hours a day. The coordination ensures comprehensive coverage of transportation networks while avoiding duplication of effort between different law enforcement agencies. Bridge and tunnel security requires specialized attention to critical transportation infrastructure that serves thousands of vehicles daily while representing potential targets for criminal or terrorist activity. Security measures balance public access needs with protection requirements for essential transportation facilities. Weather monitoring stations throughout the region operate continuously to provide data for forecasting services that help residents and emergency services prepare for severe weather conditions. The stations require protection from vandalism while maintaining accessibility for legitimate maintenance and operational needs. Emergency broadcast facilities ensure that residents can receive critical information during natural disasters, severe weather, and other emergency situations that require rapid public notification. The facilities coordinate with various government agencies to ensure that emergency information reaches the public quickly and accurately. Civil defense facilities maintain emergency supplies and equipment that would be needed during large-scale disasters or emergency situations that overwhelm normal response capabilities. The facilities require security while remaining accessible for emergency activation when circumstances require expanded response efforts. As dawn approaches, the night shift officers begin preparing for the transition to day shift operations, while maintaining their vigilance during the key final hours of overnight patrol duties. The transition requires careful communication about ongoing situations and any developments that day shift personnel will need to address. Day shift officers begin arriving at police facilities for briefings about overnight activities and any situations that require continued attention during business hours. The briefings ensure continuity of police services while allowing night shift personnel to complete their duties and prepare for rest. The city gradually awakens as early commuters begin their morning routines and businesses prepare to open for another day of commerce and activity. The transition from night to day brings increased activity levels that require different approaches to maintaining public safety and order. Street lights begin shutting off automatically as daylight increases, while overnight security measures transition to daytime protocols that accommodate increased public activity in areas that were quiet during overnight hours. The transition reflects the different security needs that correspond to varying levels of community activity. Night shift officers complete their final patrol routes while conducting security checks of facilities and areas that will soon fill with residents beginning their daily activities. The final patrols ensure that the transition to daytime operations occurs smoothly without security gaps that could create vulnerabilities. Emergency services maintain their around-the-clock readiness while adjusting staffing levels and resource allocation to meet the different types of calls and situations that typically occur during business hours. The adjustments reflect experience-based understanding of how emergency service needs vary throughout the day and night cycles. In the quiet moments before the city fully awakens, night shift personnel take satisfaction in another successful completion of their protective duties, knowing that residents slept safely while vigilant guardians maintained watch over the community's security and welfare. The night fades into memory as daylight brings renewed activity to streets and facilities that remain secure throughout the dark hours. The invisible network of protection that operated while most people slept prepares to continue its essential mission through another cycle of day and night, maintaining the eternal vigilance that preserves community, safety, and peace. The basement archives extend deeper than most visitors realize, with corridors that branch into specialized storage areas where the oldest case files rest in climate-controlled silence. Here, beneath the foundation of the modern police station, lies the accumulated memory of the city's entire relationship with crime and justice, preserved in boxes and folders that chronicle nearly a century of investigations, prosecutions, and the slow evolution of law enforcement practices. Archivist Dr. Elizabeth Harper descends the narrow staircase that leads to the deepest storage level, her footsteps echoing softly against concrete walls that were poured in the 1940s when the original foundation was expanded to accommodate the growing volume of records that would need permanent preservation. The air here carries the distinctive scent of aged paper and preservation chemicals, creating an atmosphere that speaks to decades of careful stewardship over documents that hold irreplaceable historical value. The oldest files, dating back to the 1920s, occupy specially designed cabinets that protect them from light, moisture, and temperature fluctuations that could accelerate the deterioration of paper and ink that have already survived nearly a century of storage. Each file represents not only a specific criminal case, but also a window into the social conditions, investigative methods, and community concerns that characterize different periods of the city's development. A leather-bound ledger from 1923 contains handwritten entries that record crimes and investigations using methods that seem almost primitive compared to modern techniques, yet reveal the same careful attention to detail and commitment to justice that continues to motivate contemporary police work. The ledger's pages, yellowed with age but still clearly legible, document cases with the formal language and meticulous penmanship that characterized official record-keeping. In an era before typewriters became standard equipment, the handwriting in the 1923 ledger belongs to Sergeant William Murphy, whose careful script recorded details of burglaries, assaults, and other crimes that disturbed the peace of a much smaller city, where many residents knew each other personally, and crime often involved disputes between neighbors or business associates, rather than the anonymous violence that would characterize later urban development. Photograph collections from the 1930s show crime scenes documented with large format cameras that required careful positioning and lengthy exposure times, resulting in images with extraordinary detail and artistic composition that reveal both the technical limitations and artistic sensibilities of early police photographers. The photographs, printed on heavy paper stock and mounted in albums with detailed captions, provide visual documentation of an era when photography was still considered a specialized skill requiring substantial training and expensive equipment. Each photograph in the 1930s collection bears the stamp of the police department's photography unit, along with case numbers and dates written in India ink that has remained legible despite decades of storage in less than ideal conditions. The photographs show not only crime scenes, but also the broader urban environment of a city that was experiencing rapid growth and the social tensions that accompanied economic development during the Depression era. Evidence logs from the 1940s document the beginning of more systematic approaches to physical evidence collection and preservation, reflecting the influence of early forensic science developments that were beginning to demonstrate the value of careful scientific analysis in criminal investigations. The logs show how police departments gradually adopted new techniques while maintaining traditional approaches that had proven effective over time. The 1940s evidence logs reveal the challenges faced by police departments that were trying to implement new scientific methods while working with limited budgets and equipment that was often improvised or adapted from other purposes. Despite these limitations, the logs show remarkable attention to detail and systematic approaches that laid the foundation for modern forensic practices. Witness statement forms from the 1950s reflect the increasing formalization of police procedures, as departments adopted standardized methods for documenting testimony and organizing case information according to principles that were being developed through professional law enforcement organizations and training programs. The forms show how police work was evolving from informal, locally developed practices towards standardized procedures based on scientific principles and legal requirements. The 1950s forms include pre-printed sections for different types of information, reflecting understanding that systematic documentation would improve the quality of investigations, while ensuring that important details were not overlooked due to the pressures and distractions that characterize active crime scenes. The forms represent early attempts to combine efficiency with thoroughness in criminal investigations. Case files from the 1960s document the social upheaval and changing crime patterns that accompanied rapid urban growth and cultural changes that affected communities throughout the nation. The files show how police departments adapted their methods and priorities to address new types of criminal activity while maintaining their traditional focus on public safety and order. Drug-related crimes begin appearing more frequently in 1960s. Case files reflecting the emergence of problems that would dominate law enforcement concerns for decades to come. The early drug cases show police departments struggling to understand and address forms of criminal activity that required new investigative techniques and specialized knowledge about substances and distribution, networks that were unfamiliar to officers trained in traditional police work. The 1960s files also document changing attitudes toward various types of crime and punishment, showing how social movements and legal developments influenced police practices and community expectations about law enforcement, priorities, and methods. The changes appear gradually in case files that show evolving approaches to domestic violence, juvenile crime, and civil rights issues that were becoming increasingly prominent in public discourse. Civil Rights-era documentation includes files that show how police departments navigated the complex social and political challenges of maintaining order while respecting constitutional rights and community concerns about fair treatment of all residents, regardless of race, ethnicity, or social status. The files reveal both the difficulties and the gradual progress that characterized law enforcement's response to civil rights concerns. The 1970s bring evidence of technological changes that began transforming police work through improved communication systems, vehicle technology, and early computer applications that allowed more sophisticated analysis of crime patterns and investigative information. Case files from this period show the gradual integration of new technologies with traditional investigative methods. Computer printouts begin appearing in 1970s case files, representing early attempts to use data processing technology for criminal justice applications. The printouts, created on continuous form paper using dot matrix printers, show how police departments were experimenting with automated systems for managing information about arrests, case status, and criminal history records. The 1970s files document the emergence of specialized police units that focused on specific types of crime requiring expertise beyond general patrol and investigation capabilities. Drug enforcement units, juvenile crime specialists, and domestic violence response teams begin appearing in organizational charts and case assignments that reflect more sophisticated approaches to law enforcement challenges. Scientific advances in forensic analysis become apparent in 1980s case files that include laboratory reports using techniques that were unavailable to earlier generations of investigators. DNA analysis begins appearing in the late 1980s, representing a revolutionary advancement that would eventually transform criminal investigation and prosecution by providing unprecedented accuracy in identifying suspects and excluding innocent individuals. The 1980s files show how police departments gradually adopted computer technology for routine operations, moving beyond experimental applications toward integrated systems that supported daily operations including report writing, evidence tracking, and communication between different units and agencies. The transition appears in files that include both handwritten reports and early word-processed documents. Gang-related crime documentation expands significantly during the 1980s, reflecting the growth of organized criminal groups that required specialized investigative techniques and multi-agency cooperation to address effectively. The gang files show how police departments developed new approaches to intelligence gathering and analysis while working with federal agencies and other jurisdictions to address criminal organizations that operated across traditional boundaries. The 1990s introduced digital photography and electronic documentation systems that begin supplementing traditional paper-based record keeping, though the transition occurs gradually as departments balance new capabilities with established procedures and legal requirements for evidence preservation and court admissibility. Case files from this period show the coexistence of old and new technologies during the transition period. Internet-related crimes begin appearing in 1990s case files, representing entirely new categories of criminal activity that required police departments to develop expertise in computer technology and electronic evidence collection. The early internet crime files show investigators learning to address fraud, identity theft, and other offenses that existed in digital environments, requiring specialized knowledge and equipment. The 1990s also document the expansion of victim services programs that reflected growing understanding of trauma and its long-term effects on crime victims and their families. Case files begin including more detailed documentation of victim assistance efforts and follow-up services that extended police involvement beyond the immediate investigation and prosecution phases. Community policing initiatives appear throughout 1990s case files, showing how police departments were experimenting with approaches that emphasize prevention and community engagement rather than solely reactive. responses to criminal activity. The files document neighborhood meetings, business partnerships, and other collaborative efforts that aim to address underlying conditions that contributed to crime. Dr. Harper pauses in her examination of historical files to update environmental monitoring systems that track temperature, humidity, and air quality in the storage areas. The monitoring systems represent contemporary understanding of preservation requirements that help ensure these historical documents will remain accessible for future researchers and legal purposes. Conservation efforts ongoing throughout the archives include document restoration projects that repair damage from age, handling, and less than ideal storage conditions that existed before current preservation standards were established. The restoration work requires specialized expertise and materials that can stabilize deteriorating documents while maintaining their historical authenticity and evidential value. Digital preservation projects create electronic copies of historically significant documents, providing backup copies while reducing the need to handle original materials that might be damaged by frequent access. The digital copies also make historical records accessible to researchers who might not otherwise be able to examine original documents due to their fragile condition. The digitization process requires careful attention to color accuracy, resolution, and metadata creation that will allow electronic copies to serve research and legal purposes while preserving all the information contained in original documents. Each digital file includes detailed documentation about the original document's condition, storage location, and any conservation treatments it has received. Legal requirements for document retention vary according to the type of case and potential ongoing legal implications, requiring archivists to maintain complex tracking systems that ensure records are preserved for appropriate periods while allowing authorized disposition of materials that are no longer required for legal purposes. The tracking systems must accommodate changing legal requirements and court decisions that might affect retention schedules. Research requests from academic institutions, legal professionals, and government agencies require careful evaluation to ensure that access to historical records serves legitimate purposes while protecting confidential information and maintaining security for materials that might still have evidentiary value. The evaluation process balances transparency and accountability with privacy and security concerns. Some research projects focus on statistical analysis of historical crime patterns to understand how social and economic conditions influence criminal activity over time. These studies require access to large numbers of case files and sophisticated analytical techniques that can identify trends and patterns while respecting confidentiality, requirements that protect individual privacy. Historical research also examines the evolution of police procedures and investigative techniques, using case files to understand how law enforcement practices have changed in response to technological advances, legal developments, and changing social expectations about police roles and responsibilities. This research contributes to ongoing improvements in police training and policy development. Genealogical research sometimes requires access to historical police records when individuals seek information about family members who were involved in criminal cases as victims, witnesses, or suspects. These requests require careful evaluation to balance legitimate family history, interests with privacy protections, and legal restrictions on access to criminal justice information. International research collaborations include sharing information about historical cases that involved individuals or criminal organizations that operated across national boundaries. These collaborations require coordination with foreign law enforcement agencies and careful attention to legal requirements that govern international sharing of criminal justice information. The archives serve as a resource for cold case investigations that benefit from access to historical information about unsolved crimes, criminal patterns, and investigative techniques that might provide new leads or suggest alternative approaches. to cases that remained unresolved using contemporary methods. Cold case investigators often discover connections and patterns that were not apparent when cases were originally investigated. Historical case files sometimes contain information that becomes relevant to contemporary investigations involving similar criminal methods, suspect patterns, or geographic areas. The connections might not be immediately apparent, but can provide valuable context for understanding current criminal activity and developing effective investigative strategies. Training programs for new police officers increasingly include examination of historical cases that illustrate important principles of investigation, evidence collection, and case development. The historical perspective helps officers understand how current practices evolved and why certain procedures are considered essential for effective law enforcement. Academic researchers studying criminology, sociology, and related fields use historical police records to understand how crime and criminal justice have evolved in response to social, economic, and technological changes. This research contributes to broader understanding of crime causation and the effectiveness of different approaches to prevention and control. Legal scholars examine historical cases to understand how constitutional principles and legal precedents developed through specific criminal cases and court decisions. This research contributes to ongoing discussions about criminal justice reform and constitutional interpretation in contemporary legal contexts. As evening settles over the archives, Dr. Harper completes her daily review of preservation conditions and security systems that protect the accumulated memory of nearly a century of police work. The archives rest in climate-controlled silence, their contents preserved for future generations who will continue the ongoing work of understanding crime, justice, and community safety. The weight of memory contained in these archives represents not only individual cases and investigations, but also the collective experience of a community's relationship with crime and its evolving understanding of justice, fairness, and public safety. Each file contributes to the larger story of how society addresses criminal behavior while maintaining respect for individual rights and community values. In the deep quiet of evening hours, the archives maintain their vigil over documents that bridge past and present, preserving the lessons learned through decades of police work while remaining available to inform future decisions and actions. The accumulated wisdom held in these files continues to serve the cause of justice through careful preservation and thoughtful access policies that balance transparency with security. The archives settle into nighttime security mode while their contents rest in organized silence, holding the documented memory of human struggles with crime and the persistent effort to maintain community safety through systematic investigation and legal accountability. In this silence, history waits patiently for tomorrow's continuation of the eternal work of justice.
Unit 47 to dispatch, conducting routine patrol check on Maple Street, all clear and continuing route.